Yo legends! Welcome to Fanfiction Legend. Grab your headphones, because today's story is about to hit different. Disclaimer. I do not claim ownership of this story. All rights belong to the original creators. One Piece, my second uncle is Kizaru. Page 61. Only there is your real stage. Invite me. Zoro continued to be surprised. Invite a loser like me. Why? It's not that Sauron is belittling himself. Not only is Dashigi younger than Zoro, she also possesses such terrifying strength. Zoro really didn't understand why Kyle valued him so much. Why? There is no reason. Kyle said seriously. If you really need a reason. That's Dashigi's dream, it's so small. She just wants to collect all the famous swords in the world. Such a small dream is too easy to achieve, but it is also too easy for her to slack off. I need a bigger dream on my ship. For example, the world's greatest swordsman. Kyle suddenly smiled at Zoro. But this smile made Zoro feel as if a new world had suddenly opened up. It's as if the other person has unwavering faith in himself and will definitely achieve his dream. Is this man in front of me a lunatic? Why can he be so crazy? So arrogant. For some reason, Zoro suddenly felt that he would get along well with Kyle. Maybe, joining his pirate group is not a bad thing. Ha 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 ha. Zoro suddenly burst into laughter. In a flash, his eyes suddenly flashed. Zoro grinned and said, "Interesting. You can tell that woman that her dream will never come true. Because she will never take his Wado Ikemanji away from the world's greatest swordsman." Zoro reached out and suddenly took the Wado Ikemanji that was placed beside the bed and placed it horizontally in front of his chest. He immediately raised his head and said with a firm look, "Next time, I won't lose again, Captain." Hearing the word captain, the corners of Kyle's mouth instantly raised. He laughed and said, "Ha ha, don't worry, when Dashigi finishes the ideological education of the 16 naval branches, I will convey your words to her intactly." But before that, Kyle's dark eyes suddenly flickered. Looking at the compatibility equals 75% sign in front of him, he smiled and said, "Let me tell you how Dashigi became stronger. S-Class character card Gold Saint Shura. Load." Suddenly, Zoro, who was about to say something, became confused. At this moment, he seemed to have come to a mysterious space. Although he had never seen such a scene before, he could clearly sense. I seem to be in the universe. This is my power. The restless energy surged in Zoro's body. This was clearly his first time experiencing such a mysterious event, but he seemed to have understood everything since birth. Zoro suddenly clenched his fists, his mouth curled up wildly, and he shouted to the endless sea of stars. "Burn! My little universe! Saint Seiya Zoro!" See? Chapter 58 Smoker's Visit. The vast stars exploded at this moment, bursting into brilliant light. This moment. Zoro had no way of telling whether he was in the universe or the universe existed within his body. He only felt that endless power was constantly nourishing his body and baptizing every cell in his body. His limbs are constantly getting stronger. Infinite sword intent condensed in his limbs, rapidly improving his understanding of the way of the sword. His body and soul were roaring with joy. After a while, everything suddenly returned to calm, as if nothing had happened. The exploded microcosm condensed again and sat safely in Zoro's body. This is... Zoro opened his eyes, clenched his fists, and felt the power he had just gained in disbelief. The seventh sense, microcosm. He had just mastered it, but at this moment he was like a saint who had been studying the microcosm for years. Zoro now only felt that he could stir the air in front of him with a wave of his hand and easily launch a sharp flying slash. This terrifying improvement was a qualitative leap for him, who had not even reached the iron-cutting realm before. And the other side. During the time when Zoro was realizing his new power, Kyle silently opened Zoro's partner interface in his mind. Like Dashigi and others, Zoro's interface also sought his real shadow and the phantom of a young man wearing a golden armor. That phantom was naturally the golden Saint Shura loaded by Zoro. Next to the two people's portraits is Zoro's attribute panel at the moment. Partner, Zoro, Gold Saint Shura. Qualification, S. Level, 1. Experience, 0 out of 100. Combat power, 40. Total qualification, 400. Strength qualification, 120. Physical qualification, 110. Agility qualification, 90. Spiritual qualification, 80. Total qualification, still only 400? Looking at Zoro's attribute panel, Kyle's eyes immediately showed a thoughtful look. He had already discovered it when he saw Nami's Janna panel before. The qualification gap between the S-level character template and the A-level character template does not seem to be as big as the actual strength gap between the characters. Even though Kyle had not watched the entire Saint Seiya anime, he vaguely remembered that the battles between the saints seemed to be able to send the saints flying out of the earth and into the universe at any time. However, the Rukia template equipped with Zanpakutō has the same qualification data as the Gold Saint. Obviously, in terms of data, the system is more game-oriented rather than based on the actual situation of the character. But, no matter if they are S-class, A-class, or D-class, they are just my tools. After closing the partner interface, Kyle's eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. With Zoro joining us, and the training room having been upgraded to level 3, you can gain 2,400 experience points every day. It won't be long before Kyle can officially join the ranks of world-class powerhouses. By that time, he could carry out his money-making plans more unscrupulously. The East China Sea still restricts his development too much. Apart from the naval base, there are not many big pirates for him to exploit. Unlike the other three seas, pirates with bounties of tens of millions of Baileys can be found everywhere. In the East China Sea now, the only things that Kyle still cares about are the weapons factories mentioned in Click's intelligence. When his strength allows, he plans to directly seize the weapons factory of the Don Quixote family, then produce weapons himself, and then sell them to the people of Donghai at a low price. Eliminate the breeding of pirates from the root. How is it? Are you satisfied with the power of my imagination? Seeing that Zoro was still immersed in the shock of his microcosm and unable to extricate himself, Kyle smiled slightly after reading the attribute interface and took the initiative to ask. Zoro suddenly raised his head, his eyes revealing shock. The power of fantasy? Did you do this, Captain? He asked in confusion. Of course. Kyle chuckled and nodded in response. Immediately, under Zoro's incredulous gaze, he once again took out the ability of the imagination fruit that he had made up before and explained it to Zoro. By the way, Kyle also told his true identity to Zoro, who was already 100% loyal. This series of intelligence bombardment instantly confused Zoro. Within one day, his identity changed twice. First he was a bounty hunter, then a pirate, and now he is a member of the Navy's Secret Service. In this regard, Zoro just wants to say sincerely, you city people really know how to have fun. However, after learning that there was a training room in the cabin that could make people become stronger quickly, he stood up without saying a word and asked Kyle to take him to the training room to practice. As for the injuries on his body, they had all recovered from the moment he became a Saint Seiya. Page 62. After all, when it comes to sit-ups, the Saint Seiya is a professional. The sea breeze is gentle. After Dashigi boarded the ship, Tiga embarked on a new journey again. On the deck, Kyle looked at Kobe who was cleaning the hull and couldn't help but sigh. Ah, how come it's just that short? His eyes turned. A character card immediately appeared in front of his eyes. The portrait above had a head of golden hair and was wearing a cloak with 4th generation written on it. This card was actually the A-level character card that Kyle had drawn earlier, Minato Namikaze. Just now, Kyle used this character card to conduct a compatibility test on Kobe. The conclusion reached is a very regrettable 56%. Just a little bit more and Kobe could successfully fit the character card and become the 5th toolman under Kyle. I wonder if dyeing this guy's hair yellow would make him more compatible. Looking at Kobe, who was carefully cleaning up the footprints left by the previous Navy, Kyle thought secretly in his heart. It's a pity that there is nothing on the Tiga that can be used to dye hair, otherwise he would have to give Kobe yellow hair. A few days later. At the port of Kikoyashi village. A naval warship slowly docked at the shore for basic supplies. Smoker walked down the ship with 3 smoking cigars in his mouth. When he saw the scene at the port, his brows frowned instantly. He reached out and called over a new lieutenant who had replaced Dashigi, pointed to a flag with a whirlwind and a girl printed on it, and asked, "What organization's flag is that, and why does this town hang it in such a prominent place?" In the world of pirates, flags often carry some special meanings, especially flags on land, which are not allowed to be hung by anyone. Just like the 4 emperors use flags to occupy territory, the Navy uses flags to declare protection. Generally speaking, only a force that is recognized by the sea is qualified to fly its flag in the sky. The new adjutant followed Smoker's gaze and also saw the flag hanging over the village of Kokoasi. A look of confusion immediately appeared on his face. "I'm sorry, Colonel Smoker, this is the first time I've seen such a flag as well." The new adjutant, who was born and raised in the East China Sea, replied apologetically. Then he quickly added, "I will send someone to the village to inquire about the origin of this flag." "Need not." Smoker suddenly interrupted him with his hand, and then a look of curiosity flashed in his eyes, and he said to the adjutant beside him, "Interesting. It will allow the villagers of Kokoyasi to abandon the protection of the Navy and fly their own flag. This organization shouldn't be that simple." Chapter 59: Smoke vs. Wind. As he spoke, Smoker stepped off the ship. Ever since the guys from headquarters forced him to be labeled as a hero of the East China Sea last time, he has been in a bad mood. After leaving the G-153 branch base, he asked along the way and found this place by following the trail of the Dusk Pirates. For some reason, after seeing the whirlwind logo on the flag, he immediately recalled the image of Kyle being lifted up by the whirlwind. Smoker's intuition was telling him that the power behind this flag was most likely related to the Dusk Pirates. After all, the pirate ship of the Dusk Pirates is a battleship sailing in a storm. After getting off the ship, Smoker did not stay at the port for long, but went straight to find the only local civil servant in Kokoyasi village, Sheriff Aegean. At this time, Aegean, wearing a small windmill on his head, was sitting in his small office, drinking wolfberry water from a thermos cup, and looking at Nami's portrait on the wall with a gratified smile like an old father. A cool breeze blew in from the window, making the windmill rustle. Without the oppression of the Arlong pirates, they now have the protection of the Storm Witch Church. Life in Kikoyashi village is getting better and better. Looking at the clouds in the sky, even the uneducated Aegean couldn't help but sigh. What a wonderful day! However, just as Aegean's voice fell, a pungent smell of cigarettes suddenly broke into his beautiful life. "Excuse me, are you the sheriff here?" The small door of the office was pushed open, and the burly Smoker lowered his head, turned sideways, and barely squeezed into the security booth. "I am." Aegean put down the thermos cup, a puzzled look on his face. "Excuse me, what can I do for you?" "Ah." Smoker groaned, exhaled 2 streams of smoke from his nose, and introduced himself. "I am a Navy from Rogue Town, and I am currently on a mission nearby." As he spoke, he reached into his pocket and pulled out Kyle's bounty order, and continued. "According to our Navy's intelligence, a group of extremely vicious pirates have been lurking around here. Have you seen any strange ships coming and going recently?" The moment Aegean saw Smoker take out Kyle's bounty order, his pupils suddenly shrank. As one of the few people who can be considered as Nami's confidant, he clearly knows that in addition to being the spiritual totem of the Storm Witch Church, Nami is also a navigator of the Dusk Pirates. So when he saw the Navy chasing Kyle, his heart suddenly trembled. But the next second, after hearing Smoker utter the words extremely vicious, Aegean's nervous expression disappeared instantly, and a hint of disdain flashed in his eyes. Atrocious? For some reason, these 4 words coming out of the Navy's mouth just made Aegean feel extremely funny. His expression instantly turned into annoyance, and he replied perfunctorily. "Never seen it. Also, smoking is not allowed in my office. Please get out right now." Aegean stood up and ordered Smoker to leave. Smoker was stunned, and soon he noticed something wrong in Aegean's eyes. You know this group of pirates, right? He suddenly slammed Kyle's bounty on the table and said to Aegean sternly. You know, if you know about this but don't report it, you will be sentenced to the same crime as the pirates. What's more, you are a sheriff, which is simply adding to the crime. Smoker took a step forward, his might slowly emanating from his body, trying to force Akin to reveal Kyle's whereabouts. But at this moment, a gust of wind suddenly blew into the small office, blowing the documents on the desk into pieces and sticking them tightly to Smoker's face. At the same time, a delicate cry suddenly came from outside the window. A dignified Navy captain actually only knows how to use force to oppress the people. Is this the justice that your Navy implements? Who? Stretching out his hand to block the strong wind in front of him, Smoker immediately turned his gaze to the window. Soon, he saw an orange-haired girl in a white robe, sitting on top of the whirlwind. Nami! Aegean screamed. But Nami outside the window still had a serious expression. She didn't look at Aegean at all. Instead, she looked at Smoker and smiled gently. I recognize you. Smoker, the hero of the East Sea. I heard that you solved the dictatorship of Colonel Monka of Branch G153. Why? Are you coming here now to continue to take advantage of the great achievement of the Arlong Pirates? Although Nami already knew Kyle's true identity, she could not have any good feelings towards the other Navy members in the East China Sea. Especially after seeing Smoker, the hero of the East China Sea. As a member of the Dusk Pirates, she knew better than anyone how much of a hero Smoker was. So Nami just started to mock mercilessly. What did you say? Hearing the sarcasm in Nami's tone, Smoker inexplicably felt a surge of anger. What a bullshit East China Sea hero, that's not what he wants to be. But he still suppressed his temper and asked Nami. What's going on with the Arlong Pirates you mentioned? As a Navy officer of the East China Sea, Smoker has some knowledge of the name of the Arlong Pirates. It is said that it is a pirate group hiding somewhere in the East China Sea, using the mobility of fishmen to move erratically. What's going on? You're a Marine, do you still need me to tell you about pirates? Nami turned her gaze towards Jian with disdain and said. Aegean, the church matter has come to an end. I came here today to say goodbye to you. Goodbye? Aegean was surprised, but considering Smoker beside him, he began to wink at Nami. But Nami seemed not to notice and smiled to herself. That's right. Let Nokigo handle the rest. I have to hurry back to the Tiga and continue my training. Nami has been out for so many days without gaining any experience and is already eager to go back. Now, with the dividends from killing the evil dragon group, Nami and Nojiko have successfully developed this small church that was just established not long ago into a religious organization with hundreds of people. There were even quite a few people who became high-level believers directly after learning that it was Nami who killed the evil dragon. In order to allow these believers to truly enjoy the benefits of the church, Nami had to seize every opportunity to improve her own strength. Otherwise, when the believers pray to her, she won't be able to lend them any strength. That could easily lead to the collapse of faith. After saying goodbye to Ken, Nami didn't plan to say anything more to Smoker. From Dashigi, she knew that Smoker was a serious Navy and would never really do anything to Ken and other villagers. A whirlwind suddenly emerged, and Nami flew high into the sky on the vortex of air like the daughter of wind. However, at this moment, a gray-white smoke suddenly covered the entire sky. Smoker's smoky figure suddenly appeared in front of Nami and stopped her. Wait a minute. You just said Tiga, right? Page 63. A large amount of smoke was billowing around Smoker, constantly spreading in all directions, exuding a strong hostility. But Nami just laughed when she saw this, and then admitted generously. Ha? What's wrong? Smoker said solemnly. As far as I know, the name of the Dusk Pirates pirate ship is Tiga. And among that group of pirates, there is also a person who can control storms. Oh? Nami's eyes focused, and an endless storm suddenly emerged. Then, she smiled charmingly and clapped her hands gently. I didn't expect that Colonel Smoker wasn't as useless as I heard. You even know the name of our pirate ship. Not bad, it's worth encouraging. All of a sudden, the violent wind blew away all the smoke in the sky. Nami's eyes flickered. A colonel from the Navy headquarters? That's perfect, let her see what level her future colleagues are at. Chapter 60 Backer. Sure enough, it was you who helped Kyle evacuate at the port of Rogue Town that day. Looking at the strong wind in the sky, Smoker instantly recognized Nami's identity. Then his eyes suddenly widened and he stared at Nami. Smoker will never forget the humiliation Kyle brought him. The shame was not only on his body, but also in his heart. And today, he finally caught the tail of the Dusk Pirates. No matter what, he would not let go of the yellow-haired girl in front of him. As his thoughts flashed through his mind, Smoker suddenly exhaled a puff of thick smoke. The smoke swelled up when it encountered the wind and became extremely thick in an instant. At this time, Smoker roared. Give me your life. White wind. In an instant, countless tiny smoke particles danced wildly, arranged and combined, and turned into a huge gray-white net, flying quickly towards Nami's head. When the Navy meets pirates, there is no need for any unnecessary nonsense. The battle is imminent. After letting Kyle escape once, Smoker planned to directly block the airspace above Nami to cut off her possibility of flying away. However, the idea is beautiful, but the reality is cruel. Facing Smoker's smokescreen that covered the sky, Nami remained calm, looking at the smokescreen around her with a half-smile in her eyes. She suddenly laughed and said, "That's it? Is this the end? No way. No way. A hero of the East China Sea, is this all he is capable of?" Nami said something sarcastic. And the next second, her arm suddenly became as smooth as silk, and then she swung forward vigorously. Show some real skill, Chief Smoker. Otherwise, you will be defeated by a little girl like me. The hurricane is howling. Ha! The moment Nami finished her words, a strong gale suddenly surged up, roaring and blowing on the huge smoke net condensed by Smoker. Strong wind versus smoke. The outcome will be decided in an instant. The mighty wind pressure was like countless sharp blades, tearing apart the huge smoke net in the sky. Then another gust of strong wind blew past. The remaining smoke in the sky was also blown away and disappeared at this moment. Nami rode on the whirlwind and looked at Smoker with amusement. Oh my, it seems that I am slightly better in the contest of abilities. After all, something like smoke can't exist in a strong wind, right? As she spoke, she tilted her head playfully to act cute. It was as if, from the very beginning, she had never taken this battle seriously. Hateful. Feeling this familiar feeling, Smoker suddenly let out a roar. Last time, Kyle also slipped away from him in such a relaxed manner. And today, history is always surprisingly similar. Smoker never expected that Nami's control over the power of the fruit had reached a level comparable to his. There are also differences in the strengths of the fruits. His smoke was obviously suppressed by Nami's storm. It would be easier to say if the strength is very different. But if the two have similar control over the fruit's abilities, if he continues to use the power of the fruit, he will definitely fail. However, it is absolutely impossible for Smoker to give up the prey in front of him. In anger, he suddenly drew out his 10 weapons with a ferocious look on his face. Don't think this is the end. The battle isn't over yet. By man. Swish. A cloud of smoke suddenly appeared at Smoker's feet, rising into the sky. Like a vine transcending a pillar, it spiraled upward, pushing Smoker's body towards Nami. Since the fruit ability is not enough, he chooses to fight in close combat. With the seastone-studded 10-handed weapon in his hand, Smoker believed that as long as he could attack Nami once, he could win the battle. It's a pity that Nami, who has always been on guard against him, would never give him the chance to get close to her. Just like what Nami said before. In front of the strong wind, Smoke is always a younger brother. What a persistent marine. She chuckled, rode on the whirlwind, and suddenly rose high, perfectly avoiding Smoker's 10-hand attack. At the same time, quietly, a hurricane suddenly rolled up from the ground and blew towards the smoke under Smoker. Under the force of the wind, the column of smoke that supported Smoker upwards broke instantly, revealing a gap. Having lost his bottom support, Smoker could no longer move forward after reaching a certain height. Ha ha! Nami chuckled, a gentle air current lingering around her. Mr. Navy, give up. With your current strength, you can't beat me. Even if you have greater strength than me, more stamina than me, and better fighting ability than me. But in the face of the hurricane, your attacks are weak and powerless. Let's stop the battle today. If we continue, we won't be able to tell who will win. Captain Kyle is still waiting for me to return. Under the support of the wind, Nami's figure slowly rose until she became a tiny dot in Smoker's eyes. She then curled her fingers towards Smoker cutely and said with a smile, "Then, goodbye. Don't try to escape." Smoker yelled. But at this moment, ha! The howling wind swept across the sky. Smoker quickly stretched out his arms to block the sand and dust blown up by the hurricane. After a while, when everything was settled, he looked up quickly, but saw only a clear sky without a single cloud. Damn it! They ran away again. Smoker looked at Nami, who had turned into a black dot in the distant sky. He stamped his feet and beat his chest, but he could do nothing. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something and instantly focused his attention on Sheriff Aegean. Since Nami appeared in this village, the sheriff in front of him must know some information. But before he could question Aegean, another figure fell from the sky and suddenly blocked his way. "Colonel Smoker, please don't embarrass Mr. Jien." The swirling breeze slowly dissipated. Before the stunned Smoker could come to his senses, Nokigo, who had arrived with the help of divine power, smiled and said, "I'm sorry for the sudden visit. Please allow me to introduce myself. I am the Archbishop of the Storm Witch Church, Nojigo. Just now, my god issued a new oracle, asking me to entertain you and other Navy officers and soldiers. By the way, tell Lord Smoker the story that happened here in detail. Thinking about the stories here may answer some of your questions." Smoker. Looking at Nojigo being protected by the spiritual wind, Smoker was extremely surprised. Why did a girl who could control the wind appear in front of him? Since when can devil fruit abilities be wholesaled? And what about the Storm Witch Church? What is that? Page 64. Smoker felt a headache. He had only stayed in the G-153 branch base for a while, but why did he feel that the world had become so strange? He just couldn't figure it out. In the end, troubled by endless doubts, he chose to temporarily put aside the matter of pursuing the Dusk Pirates and prepared to listen to the story that could answer his confusion. After half an hour, next to the ruins of the Dragon Empire. How is this possible? Smoker clenched his fists, his eyes blazing with anger. Even though the evidence was right in front of him, he still couldn't accept the story that Nojigo had just told him. A pirate group released by the Navy actually enslaved humans in this sea area and became local tyrants for several years. More importantly, all this happened within the sight of the Navy. The strong sense of tearing between reality and imagination made Smoker feel suffocated, and he was unable to accept this cruel truth for a while. The expression on his face at this moment was even more angry and incredible than that of the victim, Nojigo. As if he had anticipated Smoker's behavior, Nojigo's expression did not change much. "I am relieved that there are still Navy who are angry about all this, which at least shows that we have not been abandoned by the world. But, the facts are the facts. What happened, happened. The damage suffered by the villagers of Cocoa West Village and all the people in this sea area is like a wrinkled piece of paper. It cannot be restored by ordinary power. That's why Nami chose to use her magical power to establish the Storm Demon Goddess cult. When people who have been hurt have faith, even if it doesn't heal their pain, it can help them forget the dark days for a while." Colonel Smoker. Nojigo took a sudden step forward and looked directly at Smoker. Perhaps out of shame or something, Smoker subconsciously began to avoid her gaze. Nojaigo didn't care and continued to speak solemnly.
According to the laws of the world government, if private church organizations want to establish churches in other countries or towns and walk openly in the sun, they must register and report to the relevant government agencies and fill in relevant information. Otherwise, they will be deported as a cult. But you have already seen the situation of the Storm Witch Church.
Our doctrines and the gods we believe in are not something that can be put on the table for explanation.
So, Colonel Smoker, could you please do us a small favor and use your position and influence in the East China Sea to solve the problem of our church's official status?
What? How can this be possible? This is a violation of discipline. Smoker looked panicked and stepped back quickly. But Nojaigo was pressing forward step by step. Why not? Is it okay for the Navy to break discipline to protect pirates, but not okay to protect civilians?
As he spoke, Noki waved his arm high, summoned an air cannon out of thin air, and then slammed it into the ruins in the distance.
All of a sudden,
the ruins seemed to be hit by a real artillery shell, and suddenly there was a huge noise.
Sand and gravel flew everywhere under the sweep of the airflow. After showing off the power he borrowed from Nami, Nojaigo looked at Smoker again and said,
"With the power of Nami's fruit, she can pass on power to every believer through the bridge of faith. In this way, the common people who believe in Nami will be able to protect themselves like me when facing crises such as pirates. Colonel Smoker, I know you are a good officer who truly serves the people.
But you also have to know that many policies are not designed to protect the people.
Being less pedantic occasionally may help you find the justice that truly suits you."
What do you think? Nojaigo's words were like a sharp arrow, hitting the bullseye. Indeed. Many policies are not designed to protect the people. Smoker fell silent suddenly.
In fact, after hearing about the Arlong pirates and Colonel Mouse's whereabouts, his heart had already been shaken. Because he is from the Navy headquarters, he knows better than anyone else. It is impossible that the senior officials in charge of the East China Sea were unaware of what happened in Cocoa West Village.
But they still acquiesced to the existence of the Dragon Pirates.
This is very telling. After pondering for a moment, Smoker was finally defeated by his inner guilt. Looking at Nojaigo, who was staring at him intently, he suddenly said in a deep voice,
"I will think about it."
Although he said he was considering it, when he said this, it already represented his decision.
Hearing this, Nojaigo smiled and took the opportunity to extend a hand of friendship to Smoker. "Thank you very much for your help.
The Storm Witch Church will always remember the kindness of Colonel Smoker."
Chapter 61, Kia Chamber of Commerce. Is it? Smoker finally agreed to help the church solve the problem of official qualifications?
It seems that I don't need to trouble my second uncle in person.
On board the Tiga.
Kyle looked at Nami, who had finished her report, and a pleased smile appeared on his face.
Unless it was necessary, he naturally didn't want to trouble the relationship with the Navy headquarters for everything. After all, that would only make his ability appear limited and reduce his weight in the eyes of the warring states. Now Nami and her team can solve the problem of official qualifications through their own means, which undoubtedly means that his team is moving towards maturity and independence. For the Storm Witch Church, official qualifications are a right they must fight for. Because only in this way can they swagger around and build churches all over the world and harvest faith. The more people believe in Nami, the more Bailey they can get. By the way, you can also use the power of the church to collect intelligence and sell weapons and ammunition. Looking at the tired Nami in front of him, Kyle showed a satisfied smile on his face and said to her, "Okay, thank you for your hard work during this period. Go back and have a good rest. Starting tomorrow, you will have to stay in the training room for 12 hours a day like Dashigi and the others. There are still many hard days ahead. Captain, I just completed my mission and returned. Can't you say something encouraging?" Nami looked at Kyle complainingly. But Kyle was unmoved. Chicken soup may taste good, but most of it is poisonous. Although honest advice may be unpleasant to the ear, it is because it is closer to the truth. Well, if you don't want to stay here, go back now. Seeing Nami exhausted after flying for a day and a night, Kyle ordered her to leave. How boring. Nami muttered, but she was indeed very exhausted. She stepped forward and opened the door to the captain's room, then turned around and said goodbye. "Good night, Captain Kyle." "Good night, have a sweet dream." Kyle smiled and waved. Pang. Nami closed the door gently. After Nami left the captain's room, Kyle looked at the map of the East China Sea on the table and continued thinking. Well, Nami's sister Nokiko is in charge of the development of the church, so there is no need to worry too much. Because of Nojiko's perfect trust in Nami, after she became a believer, she directly became the top believer. Therefore, the power she can borrow from Nami is also more abundant. If she were just in the East China Sea, there would be no need to worry about her safety. However, it is unlikely to see the benefits of the church in a short period of time. Fortunately, Kyle had never expected the church to generate immediate profits from the beginning. He looked at the map and did a quick search. In this case, it seems that the only place in the East China Sea where you can still make a lot of money is. Kyle's fingers rubbed the map for a while, and then suddenly turned into a straight line, pointing above an island. To be exact, it is a small village on the island. Ziluobu Village. Kyle whispered softly. As a small village that once appeared in anime, Kyle didn't go there for sightseeing. But here is a place Kyle has to go. First of all, there is a pirate named CLO in Shilua Village who may be compatible with the Black Butler character card. When it comes to tools, Kyle's idea has always been that it is better to kill someone by mistake than to let him go. Anyway, with the effect of 100% loyalty, even if the other party deserves to die, Kyle will still choose to let him continue to shine. After all, to put it nicely, they are Kyle's partners, and to put it bluntly, they are slaves who contribute their fighting power to Kyle. What they become depends entirely on what Kyle wants them to be. Secondly, as long as Karo is captured, Kyle can obtain an animal-type devil fruit from Sengoku. This devil fruit that I got for free, I must miss it. The last point. In fact, this is also Kyle's ultimate goal of going to Ziluobu Village. That is, he plans to bring the Kuya family's Chamber of Commerce under his control. Page 65. Of course. Kyle would definitely not forcibly seize Kaya's family business like CLO did. He went to Ziluobu Village with the intention of making a deal with Kia. A deal that is beneficial to both Kaya and the Dusk Pirates. At this moment, Kyle was no longer the ignorant man who only knew things related to the plot when he just traveled through time. He had already found out everything about the Kuya family's Chamber of Commerce. I have to say that Kuro is worthy of being the character rated by Oda as having an IQ second only to Ben Beckman, the vice-captain of the Red Hair Pirates. The Kuya family property that he planned to seize was definitely not just a small manor as shown in the anime. Kyle guessed that the reason why Kaya's family lived in Ziluobu Village was probably because the area was vast and sparsely populated, which made it convenient for the frail Kaya to recover and recuperate. And in fact, the Kuya family's Chamber of Commerce is well known in the entire East China Sea. If it weren't for the accidental death of Kuya's parents 2 years ago, which caused the Chamber of Commerce's business to plummet and become sluggish, Kyle could easily sell all the treasures in his cabin to Kaya's Chamber of Commerce. The glorious Kia family owns hundreds of merchant ships and its business covers most of the East China Sea. All the industries added together are definitely worth more than 10 billion. Even after experiencing a 2-year low period, the Chamber of Commerce managed by CLO still has at least tens of billions of assets. Here we have to talk about CLO's cleverness. He originally had the ability to quickly settle the turmoil in the Chamber of Commerce after Kaya's parents died and keep it as it was. But according to Kyle's investigation, during that period, the Kuya family's Chamber of Commerce was like a boy who gave away money, cutting off a large number of bloated and difficult-to-manage businesses. Only some properties that were loyal to the Kaya family and would not be coveted by others were left. In this way, when Chloe gets Kaya's will, he can take office directly without any obstacles, become the new owner of the Chamber of Commerce, and gain a large number of loyal subordinates. With his intelligence and talent, it is not difficult to make the Chamber of Commerce bigger and stronger and achieve greater glory. In the future Donghai Business District, CLO will definitely have a place. Unfortunately, such a perfect plan was destroyed by a group of intruders, the Straw Hat Pirates. After analyzing the information about Kaya's family, Even Kyle couldn't help but feel sorry for CLO. Alas, it would be nice if he could be a good villain and die miserably in the sea. Why do you have to think so hard to retire? In the end, you will be defeated by the younger generation and lose both your money and your life. In that case, I will be kind and reluctantly take all your people and wealth into my pocket in advance. With a chuckle in his heart, Kyle sat back on the soft seat. He believed that with the pirate crow as his token of allegiance, his cooperation with the Kaya family chamber of commerce would surely go very smoothly. Now, we just have to wait for Monka to deal with the legacy of the clique pirates. After picking up Monka, they can head to Ziliuobu village immediately. At that time, let Monka and CLO settle all old and new grudges and have a good fight. I believe that when CLO was stepped on by Monka, the expression on his face must have been very interesting. Just as Kyle was planning his future sailing direction, the den mushi on his desk suddenly rang. Bulu bulu. Bulu bulu. Okay? Kyle was stunned for a moment, then quickly reached out and picked up the microphone. Den Mushi's face instantly changed into a square-jawed look. A rough voice came from the Den Mushi. Captain Kyle? The person who called was none other than Monka, whom Kyle had just thought of. It's me. Kyle answered immediately, then frowned and asked, why are you calling at this time? What happened? Ah. Monka groaned in confusion and said, Captain Kyle, I'm not sure if this situation can be considered an accident. Because just now, I and a kin from the clique pirates encountered a group of pirates who wanted to rob us. Then the two of us took action in advance and took the lead in beating them up. Kyle? And then? Then. Monka paused for a moment, looking a little silly, and said with a guilty conscience. Jean is almost dying from the beating from the opponent. I remember that you, Captain Kyle, wanted this guy to get on board, so I called to report. Hey! Stop calling. Can't you see I'm on the phone? On the other side of the Den Mushi, Monka suddenly yelled at someone unknown. What? On the Tiga, Kyle was also stunned for a moment. After he reacted, the corners of his mouth twitched twice, and he asked with no idea what expression he should express. How is Ajin doing now? Ah, he's fine now. Den Mushi replied immediately, I saw that he couldn't hold on any longer, so I threw him out of the battlefield first. That guy should be hiding in that corner alley, quietly recovering from his injuries. There is such a big shot in the East China Sea who can beat Ajin out of the battlefield? Kyle was puzzled. Where are you now? I will send the Tiga to find you immediately. Put. Suddenly, a sound of a sharp object piercing flesh was heard from the Den Mushi. But then, Monka's calm voice was heard. We are now in the small town of Crooked Hook on the island of Chirrut. Captain Kyle, don't worry. Ajin was only stabbed a few times in the back. He won't die for a while. I hope so. Kyle nodded silently, then immediately hung up the phone, summoned Tiga, and changed the direction of the voyage. Originally, they were planning to go to a base of the clique pirates to pick up Monka. But now that Ajin is injured, they have to change course. No matter what, he was just a tool he had reserved. Kyle's ticket to the Grand Line still depends on these tools. Chapter 62, Prisoner Buggy the Clown. Hook Town. When Monka saw Den Mushi close its eyes, he knew that Captain Kyle had hung up the phone. He immediately put the Den Mushi into the inner pocket of his clothes with one hand. The originally honest eyes were instantly filled with a fierce scarlet color. The corpses of pirates were scattered all around. But Monka's other hand was tightly grasping a strange hand holding a sharp dagger. It was a single hand, without the support of the body, yet able to move freely. In the entire East China Sea, there is only one person who can do this, Buggy the Clown. The one who is robbing Monka is none other than the future famous king of the Four Emperors Clowns. Hey! You've been stabbing me for so long, it's my turn now. Monka grinned and showed his sharp fangs at Buggy. Put. Scarlet tentacles covered with blood-purple scales suddenly burst out from its waist. The several bloody holes on Monka's body that had just been stabbed by the dagger began to heal rapidly at this moment.
Before his physical strength is exhausted, any non-fatal injuries will have no effect on him.
Monster, monster.
Seeing this, Buggy, whose upper body was floating in the air, immediately had a look of astonishment on his face. But soon, his expression suddenly turned fierce, and he grinned evilly.
Damn you.
Don't think you can defeat me, Buggy, just because you have acquired some fruit power.
I am a man who ate the split fruit and was torn into pieces. Your attack has no effect on me either. Wahahaha. As he spoke, Buggy suddenly split the palm that Monka was holding into small pieces.
Taking advantage of Monka's temporary weakness, he quickly escaped from his grip, and his palm flew back to his body and reunited.
Damn, what a strong grip.
Feeling the swelling on his hand, Buggy quickly shook it a few times in the dark, and then continued arrogantly with the same momentum.
See? Even though you are a monster, you can't do anything to me.
If you surrender obediently and take all the valuables off your ship, I will spare your lives.
Otherwise. Boom.
Before Buggy could finish his words, a huge axe suddenly fell from the sky and went straight to his head, splitting his body in two.
Then, as if that was not enough, Monka, with eyes as red as a monster, raised his giant axe and started hacking at Buggy's body with great momentum. In just a few seconds, Buggy's body turned into a lot of pieces. But his mouth remained firm and said, "It's useless. It's useless. No matter how many times you attack, it's useless. Because I am invincible." Ouch.
The clown Buggy, who was shouting, suddenly let out a scream of pain. His body returned to normal instantly, and then his eyes turned red as he looked at Monka in front of him in disbelief.
Ha ha.
Monka, who was filled with murderous desire, let out a cold-blooded laugh, but his steps were firm and he kept moving forward.
Do you think I can't do anything to you after you stabbed me so many times? Buggy the clown.
Monka stepped hard on Buggy's foot with one foot, and the Kagun behind him pierced through Buggy's other foot and nailed it to the ground.
I've discovered a long time ago that even if your body can split infinitely, your feet can only stay on the ground. Buggy the clown, he grinned with fangs and moved his face closer to Buggy. Page 66.
The jaw, which had recovered with the help of the ghoul's power, looked extremely hideous at this moment.
Monka let out a devilish groan. I've caught you. Looking at Monka's horrifying face, Buggy's face instantly turned purple with fright. He was silent for a moment with his eyes blank. Then the next second. Put.
Having lost both his legs, he knelt on the ground and cried loudly. "Hero, spare your life. This is actually all a misunderstanding." The flexible Buggy had no spirit of a strong man at all. After discovering that his weakness had been discovered, he surrendered without any hesitation and very smoothly.
What kind of pirate's ambition? Before considering those things, at least save your life first.
I have to say, Buggy's kneeling really stunned Monka.
However, in the world of pirates, there has always been an unwritten rule that surrender will not be killed.
Seeing Buggy's miserable appearance with snot and tears, Monka immediately showed a look of disgust. The scales behind him suddenly swung, wrapping his feet in the scales, completely cutting off Buggy's possibility of escape.
Okay, stop crying. I don't have time for your nonsense. Monka swung his giant axe, stuffed Buggy's feet into a snakeskin bag, and threw it on his back.
He then ignored what happened to Buggy and headed straight towards where Ajin was. Buggy, who had lost both legs, was left kneeling on the ground alone, like an abandoned widow, with a face full of resentment.
Hey! Hey, where are you going? Hey! Wait for me.
Seeing Monka walking further and further away, Buggy quickly flew up, hung behind Monka, and followed him.
The limitations of the splitting fruit.
When the distance between his body and feet exceeds 200 meters, he will feel weak and powerless as if he were encountering seawater. In other words, once Monka flies away with his feet, he will become a completely paralyzed, useless person.
Damn it! Don't let me catch you. Otherwise, I will make sure you pay.
Buggy followed Monka with a flattering look on his face, cursing viciously in his heart. A few hours later. At the port of the small town of Crooked Hook. The rapidly approaching Tiga slowly docked on the shore. Kyle stood by the railing, looking at Monka with surprise as he carried the unconscious Ajin on his back, and
Bucky the Clown?
Seeing the iconic red nose, Kyle was stunned for a moment, but then a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth.
I see. Kyle murmured softly. He was wondering who in the East China Sea could be a match for Ajin. After all, his strength is comparable to Sanji at this period, and he is considered one of the top strong men in the East China Sea. However, if the opponent is a guy like Buggy the Clown, then any result would not be surprising. After all, he was a trainee on the Pirate King's ship, the owner of the legendary Conqueror's hockey luck. It is estimated that Monka also relied on the special physique of the ghoul, otherwise he would not have been so relaxed when he was talking to Kyle on the phone. Interesting. I didn't expect that the 4 emperors who would give the world government a headache in the future would be taken down by me just like that. It's a pity that no one in the Navy knows Buggy's future status. Otherwise, wouldn't it be easy to get 10 or 8 devil fruits just by using this big red nose?
Kyle sighed slightly, but he had already guessed what had happened. After Monka boarded the ship, he only asked a few symbolic questions, and then asked Monka to take Ajin to find Dashigi, preparing to use her return to save Ajin.
It's not time for this guy to die yet. Because just now, Kyle had tested Ajin with Zabuza Momochi's character card. The result was not beyond his expectations. Compatibility equals 80%. In other words, if nothing unexpected happens, this dying ghost will become Kyle's next tool. As for Buggy the Clown, he is just a prisoner. Kyle ordered Monka to throw his body and feet into the prison in the cabin. Chapter 63, Convert to My Devil. Ouch. Ouch. Be gentle. I can walk by myself. Buggy, who was thrown into prison by Monka, screamed in pain. Although he lost both legs, it did not affect his body's flexibility at all. He suddenly floated up and pressed his face against the dark iron fence. Hey! Hey man! Don't leave! Why are you locking me up here? We are all here to make a living, so don't be so disrespectful. Hey! Watching Monka's figure getting farther and farther away, Buggy let out a scream of grief. The scream was not because he was put in prison. In fact, such an ordinary prison could not hold him at all. He could go in and out as he pleased. What really made him uncomfortable was Monka actually handed his feet to his captain. When he first boarded the ship, Bucky recognized Kyle's identity. The pirate Kyle with a bounty of 3,000 W. Baileys. As a pirate who has seen many storms, a pirate with a mere 3,000 million bounty has no deterrent effect on him. But for some reason, the moment he saw Kyle, Bucky had an inexplicable premonition in his heart. If he dared to act up in front of Kyle, he would end up in a miserable state. Bucky has always believed in his premonitions. But if that Kyle was really as scary as he felt, wouldn't that mean he would never get his feet back and never be free? The point is, what good can they gain by locking themselves up? Suddenly, Bucky had an idea. Damn it! Could it be that these pirates are after my body? Pimping? Slave smuggling? The redemption of a kidney stripper. The more he imagined it, the more frightened Bucky became. It's over. It's over. It's over. Bucky in the prison suddenly became panicked. But at this moment, a deep voice suddenly came from behind him. Save your energy, they won't let you out easily. Scare. Who is it? Bucky shuddered and turned around quickly, only to find that in the shadow that he had not noticed, there was a burly man sitting cross-legged. You are. Bucky blinked, then looked shocked and pointed. You are Admiral Crick, who disappeared inexplicably some time ago in the East China Sea. Why are you here? Bucky asked, confused and shocked. To know. The sudden disappearance of Click and the sudden sale of various properties by the Click Pirates caused quite a stir in the East China Sea some time ago. Even some unofficial newspapers reported the incident. And it was precisely because of these reports that Monka and Akin were able to sell the Click Pirates' assets so smoothly and quickly.
It was because of the report in the newspaper that Bucky had evil thoughts and wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to grab a huge sum of money.
What I didn't expect was,
this time he failed to steal the chicken and ended up hurting himself. After hearing Buggy's question, Click, who was sitting like an old monk, looked up at the dim floor and sighed sadly.
Yeah, why?
If he hadn't fought for fame and fortune, and hadn't gone to Kyle to get back the false reputation, perhaps he wouldn't have become like this.
Unfortunately, it's too late for everything.
Click smacked his lips.
Although biologically speaking, his body and brain still belonged to Click.
But Click himself knew that his spirit and soul had already become what Kyle wanted. When he looked at Bucky again, an inexplicable light suddenly appeared in his eyes. Click took out a booklet from somewhere with the word doctrine written in big letters on it, and then grinned at Buggy.
My fellow inmate, are you interested in learning more about our Storm Witch Church?
What church?
Bucky was stunned.
But at this moment, Click had already stood up, his eyes were filled with spiritual flashes, and a drifting cyclone was wrapped around his body.
He walked towards Bucky. What are you going to do?
Bucky was shocked and his body suddenly floated backwards until his back was against the cool wall. Looking at Click approaching step by step, he couldn't help but feel a sense of fear in his heart.
Page 67. He cried out. Don't come over here. In the crew quarters.
Kyle's ears moved slightly as he watched Dashigi treating Ajin, and a faint smile suddenly appeared at the corner of his mouth.
This guy Click is quite active in preaching, isn't he? Have you started practicing on Bucky?
But soon, Kyle shook his head gently, and secretly sighed in his heart.
It's a pity that Click's first missionary journey probably wasn't an easy one. If there is anyone in the pirate world that Kyle, who has a god's perspective, cannot see through. So, apart from the king of the world who sits on the void throne, the next one is Buggy, who is imprisoned in a cage at this moment. He had seen a speculation in his previous life that Shanks was the current user of the time fruit after the death of Toki. After his fruit power awakened, he sacrificed himself and teleported Buggy to 800 years ago. That world was still a huge kingdom on land. Then Buggy awakened the power of the fruit there, used the power of fragmentation, divided the continent into countless islands, and used the Red Earth continent and the Grand Line to divide the world into 4 seas. To be frank, although Kyle knew very well how outrageous this guess was, deep down in his heart, he still had a little expectation for Bucky. After all, judging from the phenomenon of the awakening of para-human devil fruits, the fracture fruit may be able to do these things. If the plot develops like this, the pirate world will be very interesting. Kyle suddenly let out a chuckle. At this time, Ajin's treatment came to an end. Dashigi retracted the emerald green spiritual pressure in her hand, turned around and nodded to Kyle. Captain Kyle, I have already used Huidao to treat Ajin's injuries, but he has lost too much blood, so he needs to rest for a while. I think it won't be long before he wakes up. Thank you for your hard work, Dashigi. Kyle smiled slightly. I never thought that I could grab a ship doctor for myself. Dashigi raised her eyebrows and glanced at Kyle. I don't want to be a ship's doctor. Please find a real ship doctor for our pirate group as soon as possible. Ha ha ha. I'll try my best. Kyle laughed. After all, whether or not a ship doctor can be dispatched depends on whether the system gives face. This time, although Monka was intercepted by the Buggy Pirates, he returned early. But with his and Akin's efforts over the past few days, most of the legacy of the Click Pirates has actually been sold. Plus some supplies looted from the Buggy Pirates. Kyle's current Bailey reserves have reached 10 billion again. Looking back 2 months ago, tens of millions of Baileys were a huge sum of money for him. And now, in a short period of time, he is going to spend billions of Bailey's assets. If you think about it carefully, it really makes people feel deeply moved. Silent all night. In the blink of an eye, it was already dawn of the next day. Kyle walked with ease to the prison cell below the deck alone. A beam of light shone into the dark prison. After a sleepless night, Bucky, with bloodshot eyes, saw the beam of light and suddenly felt like he saw hope in life. At this moment, he didn't even bother to hide his abilities. He simply split his body into several sections and flew out of the prison. Help! Help! Let me out. I don't want to stay with that lunatic anymore. You can have anything you want. Let me out now.
Bucky cried bitterly, as if he had suffered a great injustice in his life.
However,
when he looked up, the face he saw was not Kyle's.
In an instant,
Bucky felt as if he had instantly come to another world. In the sky, a pair of scarlet eyes filled with weirdness and magatama hung high in the sky like the sun and the moon. A voice like a declaration from a god or a whisper from a devil suddenly rang out in the depths of Bucky's soul.
Don't worry, I'm here to save you. Chapter 64 Demon Zabuza, 4K. In the strange bloody spiritual world.
Buggy, who entered the Tsukuyomi space, was nailed to a cross, enjoying the same treatment as Click at that time.
All kinds of torture instruments appeared out of nowhere around Bucky and tortured his body. At the same time,
thousands of distracting thoughts, like the whispers of gods and demons, echoed in his ears, mind, and deep in his soul, advising him to believe in the storm which would end his painful life. Kyle, who has no talent for brainwashing, used this simple and crude method to completely destroy Click's will and turn him into a fanatical believer in Nami. However, at this time in the moon reading space, listening to Bucky's screams and roars in pain, Kyle's brows were tightly furrowed, and a look of fatigue was revealed in the depths of his eyes. As expected of a crew member of One Piece, they are really capable. After being tortured for so long, he was still able to maintain his self-awareness. Suddenly, Kyle, who was controlling the Tsukuyomi space, began to mutter to himself. He was really shocked when he saw that Bucky was not completely brainwashed despite his constant wailing. Even though Buggy's strength is so weak that he doesn't look like a pirate from the Grand Line at all, he was able to stumble along the way and become one of the 4 emperors in the eyes of others by chance, so he does have something in him. Kyle asked himself. If the identities were reversed, his performance wouldn't even be as strong as Click, who persisted in the spiritual world for 7 days and 7 nights. Do not. It might be an exaggeration to say strong. Kyle was just an ordinary person in his previous life. The fact that he did not kneel down immediately after such torture was a sign of strong will. Thinking of this, Kyle immediately sighed in his heart with relief. Fortunately, I am a perpetrator. As he spoke, he suddenly increased his mental power output on Tsukuyomi, prolonging the torture of Buggy. Fortunately, Zoro, the S-level partner, had officially joined the team a few days ago and became a member of the team that punched into work in the training room. After receiving feedback on Zoro's combat power, Kyle has now completely stood up and possesses the strength of a pirate with a bounty of hundreds of millions. He just didn't believe that with the terrifying recovery buff in the captain's room, he couldn't be brainwashed into becoming a trainee on Roger's ship. Real world. Kyle reached out and picked up Bucky, who was lying in front of him, covering his head, which felt a little uncomfortable due to excessive energy consumption, and threw Bucky in front of the prison bars. Then he raised his head and looked inside the prison. At this moment, Click seemed to have suffered a blow. He was cowering in a dark corner, closing his eyes and remaining silent. If it weren't for my eyelids trembling uncontrollably after hearing Kyle's footsteps, I would have thought he was asleep. Okay, stop pretending to be dead. Kyle knocked on the prison bars and pointed at Bucky standing under his feet and said, "This guy is not a simple guy. He used to be a member of the Pirate King Roger's ship. It's normal that you failed in your first missionary work. I won't blame you." As Kyle finished speaking, Click's eyelids twitched twice, then slowly opened, revealing a pair of shocked eyes. He looked at Bucky, who was lying on the ground and twitching in disbelief, then looked up at Kyle. That questioning look seemed to be saying, "That's it? The Pirate King's crew?" However, Kyle, who was in a depressed mood, did not have much time to chat with Click. He also had to go back to his room to take a nap, recover his energy as soon as possible, and then come back to continue brainwashing Bucky. Kyle looked at Click and said directly, "By the way, Ajin is back, with Bucky. It won't be long before you're released from prison. I don't need to tell you what to do next, right?" "Please rest assured, Lord Kyle." Click nodded immediately. "I will explain everything to Ajin in person, and I promise it will not affect your affairs." "That's best." Kyle nodded, waved, and walked out of the prison. He thought carefully about sending Click to impel down, and ultimately decided not to hide it from Akin. After all, they will be on the same ship in the future, and sooner or later he will know about Click's affairs.
Even with 100% loyalty, Kyle always felt it would be awkward.
In order to avoid any embarrassing situations, it is better to let Click explain everything directly. Anyway, for pirates, going to jail is not a shameful thing. What's more, he was in prison with pay. When Nami becomes powerful, the benefits he, as the bishop of the branch church, will gain will definitely make many people envious. After returning to the captain's room, Kyle fell directly onto the bed. When he woke up again, he had already missed lunchtime.
Fortunately, Kobe was very considerate and left some food for Kyle. After seeing Kyle, Kobe immediately ran into the kitchen and made lunch for Kyle. Oh? Has Jean woken up?
In the cabin's dining room. While eating his simple curry rice, Kyle chatted with Kobe, who was waiting to clean up the dishes.
Yes. Kobe nodded and said, "According to your instructions, Captain, I have just taken the pirate named Ajin to the underground prison to meet Click.
After you got out of jail, Jean has been waiting in the crew quarters for you to wake up."
I see.
Kyle took out a napkin, wiped his mouth, and then suddenly put his 5 fingers together and tapped the table lightly.
Little Tiga. Page 68. I'm here.
A ship elf that looked like a troll elf suddenly appeared in front of Kyle.
After wiping his mouth, Kyle threw the napkin into the trash can and said to Little Tiga, "Go call Ajin over. I think he should be mentally prepared now." "No problem, Captain." Little Tiga took the order immediately.
He saluted playfully like a child playing a soldier game, then turned around and disappeared into the restaurant.
As quickly as it came, it went as quickly as it came. So good. Looking at the Little Tiga who came and went freely, Kobe showed an envious look.
If he also had the same infinite teleportation speed as Little Tiga, he would be extremely efficient in cleaning the cabin. Kobe, who never forgot his original intention, couldn't help but imagine himself like Little Tiga, teleporting back and forth in the Tiga and cleaning.
This scene happened to be seen by Kyle. He suddenly smiled. "What's wrong, Kobe? Do you want to become a ship elf too?" "Ah. No, no."
Kobe was stunned for a moment, then immediately waved his hands in a panic and said shyly,
"That's right, I think Tiga's teleportation is amazing.
As long as he wants, he can appear anywhere.
It's so convenient." "Oh? Is that so?"
Kyle raised his eyebrows, looked Kobe up and down, and then asked with a smile,
"Kobe, you should have started practicing the Navy 6 styles recently, right? How do you feel about yourself during this period? The condition is not very good."
"Oh? Why do you say that?"
Kyle asked in confusion as he looked at the young boy Kobe, who had almost completely gotten rid of his weakling image. That's...
Kobe, who was not very confident, replied with a little frustration, "I was clearly practicing the 6 styles of the Navy with Miss Dashigi. But now Miss Dashigi has already mastered shaving and paper painting, but I still can't use shaving continuously."
My dear brother Kobe, if those guys in the Marine headquarters knew that it only took you 2 months to go from having no basic skills to your current level, they would probably commit suicide in a moment. It turns out that if you have talent you can do whatever you want. Cough cough.
Kyle coughed twice, but he didn't intend to let Kobe realize how talented he was.
He tapped the table and nodded calmly. You haven't learned how to shave yet, have you? Your progress is indeed a bit slow. But it doesn't matter. Everything is difficult at the beginning. Your physical fitness has already surpassed that of ordinary people. I believe that it won't be long before you can become a strong man like Dashigi and Zoro. Captain Kyle. Hearing Kyle's encouragement, Kobe's eyes instantly became moist.
Until a tear rolled down the corner of his eye, he quickly wiped his eyes with his sleeves, revealing a pair of shining pupils.
Yes. I will never let Captain Kyle down. Ah, I believe you. Kyle chuckled.
Then he suddenly realized something and clicked on Minato Namake's character card again to check the compatibility between Kobe and him.
Compatibility equals 57%.
Kyle thought to himself,
Has it increased from 56% to 57%? It looks like it won't be long before Kobe becomes the pink flash of the pirate world. After finishing his meal, Kyle started chatting with Kobe about the next training plan. After a while, under the leadership of Little Tiga, Ajin also came to the restaurant. Kobe, who was originally reporting, suddenly stopped talking, quickly cleaned up the dishes, and then sensibly left the restaurant with Little Tiga. Captain Kyle just said, as long as he can master the Marine 6 styles, the captain will use his magical fruit ability to improve his own talents and give himself great power. With so many lessons learned from the past, Kobe is now full of fighting spirit. Without saying a word, he said goodbye to Little Tiga, went straight into the training room and started practicing. At the same time, inside the restaurant, Kyle smiled and looked at a chair next to him, then gestured to Ajin. Sit down, you're welcome. The chairs were just regular chairs. Although the facility mall also sells the two system facilities of kitchen and restaurant, the first level kitchen and restaurant can only affect the speed of cooking and the appetite of eating. So Kyle never bought it. With the several expansions of the Tiga, the layout of the restaurant is now a bit strange. In the huge space, there were only some common tables, chairs and benches placed in the house, making it look very empty. But of the two people present, neither Kyle nor Ajin was the type to care about these things. Kyle placed one hand flat on the table, exuding a powerful aura that belonged to a billionaire. This was actually a way of applying mental power. He got straight to the point. Crick should have told you the details, right? So, Ajin, tell me what you think? Is it yes or no? Facing Kyle's dark and deep eyes, Ajin, who was about to say something, suddenly froze in place. Powerful. Incomparably powerful. Even though I had seen Kyle's powerful punch that day and was mentally prepared. But at this moment, when he faced Kyle, he was still speechless for a moment. Recalling the scene in the prison just now, the arrogant Captain Click actually showed a sincere face and persuaded me to join the Dusk Pirates. Ajin just felt as if he had traveled to another world. But some of Click's words before did touch a chord in his heart. Join the Dusk Pirates and witness the view from the top of the world. Originally, this was also the ambition of their Click Pirates. But with one punch from Kyle, the future that he had imagined instantly turned into the ridiculous fantasy of an ignorant person. And now, even Captain Crick, for some unknown reason, is willing to dive into the deep-sea prison and complete a mysterious mission for the man in front of him. As the chief combat captain of the Click Pirates, it seems that he has nothing to stick to. To be honest, it should be my honor to be invited by such a person. Under the suppression of Kyle's aura, Ajin thought a lot in an instant, with a myriad of thoughts in his mind. Finally, he suddenly stood up from the chair he had just sat on, bowed his head seriously to Kyle, and said, "Thank you for your kindness, Lord Kyle. I am Ajin, and I am willing to join your pirate group and become the sword in your hand." Ha ha ha. Welcome to join us. At this moment, Kyle suddenly stood up and stretched out his hand to Ajin with a big laugh. Including Kobe, this is already his 6th toolman. He is looking forward to the wonderful performance of this ghost. Ajin lowered his head and saw the palm in front of him, and he felt inexplicably excited. Is this the hand that threw that punch? Ajin raised his body in panic, then solemnly shook Kyle's hand like a subordinate. At the same time, Kyle also clicked on Zabuza Momochi's character card in his mind. He grinned at Jean. Well, Jean, according to custom, I will give a special gift to every companion who comes aboard. It's better to do it today than to wait for a better day. I'm here to give you this gift. Ah. A gift? Ajin was stunned. He was just about to be polite and tell Kyle not to spend so much money. But before he could finish his words, a mysterious force magically descended upon him. All of a sudden, Ajin felt that there was suddenly something different in his memory. Chakra. Ninjutsu. Water escape. Swordsmanship. A large amount of power and skills that do not exist in this world were mastered by Ajin in an instant, as if he had learned and experienced it personally. And at the same time, Kyle also checked Ajin's partner interface in his mind. Partner, Jin, Zaibuza Momochi. Qualification, B. Level, 1. Experience, 0 out of 100. Combat power, 30. Total qualification, 300. Strength qualification, 90. Physical qualification, 80. Agility qualification, 70. Spiritual qualification, 60. Chapter 65 The Pirates Are Coming. 4K. A Taijutsu-type ninja with a total qualification of 300? After looking at Ajin's attribute panel, Kyle suddenly had a flash of thought in his mind. Page 69. High strength, high body, low spirit. As soon as this talent data appeared, it indicated that Ajin's future fighting style would inevitably be a frontline warrior with ninjutsu as a supplement and physical skills as the main focus. Fortunately, chakra is not spiritual power, and its dependence on mental power is relatively small. In the world of Naruto, the spirit often determines the upper limit of a ninja, while the body determines the lower limit of a ninja. Even if the mental strength is a little weaker, it does not mean that the amount of chakra will be scarce. After shutting down the system in his mind, Kyle looked up and looked at the new ghost Ajin who had already loaded the character template. Oh no, maybe it would be more appropriate to call him Ghost Warrior Ajin. At this moment, this ghost warrior, who had never seen any big storms, had a shocked expression and was looking at his hands in disbelief. Kyle smiled and said, "How is it? Do you like this gift?" Gift? Ajin was stunned for a moment, then quickly raised his head, his eyes trembling as he met Kyle's gaze. This? Lord Kyle. Jin's hands were shaking as he felt the sudden increase in energy in his body. He was so shocked that he didn't know what to say and stuttered for a long time. But at this moment, Kyle smiled kindly again and said, "Don't be nervous, your gifts are much more than these." As he spoke, Kyle stretched out his hand, and ripples suddenly appeared in the calm space. Next second, as if by magic, a huge machete instantly appeared in Kyle's hand. Broken Sword Beheading Sword. Type, Weapon. Grade, B. Introduction: it can absorb the enemy's blood and use the small amount of energy in the blood to replenish the user's physical strength. When the blade is damaged, it can use the material elements in the enemy's blood to automatically repair the blade, so it is regarded as a broadsword that will never break. This broadsword was a weapon that was drawn on the same day as Zabuza's character card. Although there are no equipment restrictions, and the weapon that Ajin is good at using is not a long sword. But Kyle still decided to return the beheading sword to its original owner and let Ajin use it. I believe that in Zabuza's character template, there should be records of how to use this giant sword. Come on. Try your new weapon. Kyle smiled and handed the beheading knife in his hand to Ajin. Wait, Lord Kyle. Looking at the exaggerated beheading sword in front of him, Ajin's eyes widened. Even though he didn't know any sword skills, he could still feel the extraordinary nature of this weapon from the heavy blade of the beheading sword. Ajin subconsciously wanted to wave his hand to refuse, fearing that the big knife would be wasted in his hands. However, Kyle didn't give any explanation and directly handed the beheading knife to Ajin. All of a sudden, an indescribable sense of affinity suddenly surged into Ajin's heart. It was as if the sword had become a part of his body, and he instantly understood how to use this special knife in battle. All of this, in addition to the character card inheritance memory containing the skills of using the beheading sword, more importantly. Just when Kyle handed over the broadsword, Kyle also equipped this B-level weapon to Ajin in the system. While Ajin was amazed, he glanced at Ajin's attribute panel in his mind. His total qualification, which was originally 300, became 340 at this moment. Strength and stamina increased by 20 points each. In the system, the difference in the improvement in qualifications between weapons of different levels is actually not that big. There is only a 10-point difference between each level. What can truly divide the levels of weapons is the most essential power contained in the weapons. For example, the beheading sword and the Zanpakutō. What they have in common is that they can carry the special power in their partner's body, such as chakra, spiritual power, or other energy. The difference between them is that Zanpakutō has a more advanced form. After Dashigi awakens, her Zanpakutō will have two combat forms, Shurkai and Bankai. Therefore, the Zanpakutō, which is currently just a flat sword, is rated A level by the system, while the beheading sword, which has some special abilities, is rated B level instead. 340 overall qualifications? Not bad, I guess. Seeing that Ajin was gradually recovering from his shock, Kyle tapped the table lightly and summoned the little Tiga who was everywhere in the Tiga. After briefly explaining a few things to Ajin, he asked Xiao Tiga to take Ajin to the training room. As Kyle's number 6 toolman, there is not much time to waste on Ajin today. It was already past noon, and there were less than 12 hours left until the end of the day. There are only 12 hours of training time in a day. If you waste 1 hour, that means 200 experience points. For Kyle, every bit of experience his partner loses is like blood dripping from his heart. It was not until he saw little Tiga leading Ajin into the training room that Kyle smiled with satisfaction and whispered in his heart, "Comrades, keep going. With your unremitting efforts, sooner or later I will become the strongest in the world." After silently encouraging his companions, Kyle walked towards the cell where Bucky was imprisoned at a leisurely pace. He is not a successful capitalist after all. As the captain of the ship, now is not the time for him to sit on the deck and bask in the sun or take a nap. Because there are some things that only he can do. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, 3 days have passed. The sky is clear, and the golden sunshine exudes a comfortable warmth, illuminating the whole world. Such wonderful weather, just like Kyle's mood at the moment. In 3 days, he used the fast-recovering god-level buff in the captain's room to use an alternative infinite moon reading on Buggy. Finally, this morning, he successfully brainwashed the Pirate King's crew member, the future new 4 emperors, into a fanatical follower of Nami. To be frank. In fact, when Kyle saw Buggy kneeling in front of Nami's statue, he even felt a strong sense of guilt in his heart. Because he was the only one who knew best how severe the torture Bucky had endured during these 3 days before he finally gave in and was brainwashed. Don't think that only 3 days have passed in the real world. But in Tsukuyami's spiritual world, affected by the strength of the spiritual power between Kyle and Buggy, every time Kyle uses the Tsukuyami skill, it is equivalent to torturing Buggy for several days. During these 3 days, Kyle tortured Bucky whenever he had the energy. Even he himself couldn't remember how long he had trapped Buggy in the Tsukuyami space and tortured him. However, even so, Kyle couldn't help but sigh. God, Buggy is worthy of his name. He can talk about the sky, the earth, and the air when his name is turned upside down. Even after being brainwashed by Tsukuyami, he still has distinct personal characteristics, and he is completely different from Click, who seems like a completely different person. Bucky now hasn't changed much from before. The only change is that if he doesn't pray to the storm witch Nami every day, he will feel uncomfortable all over. Next to the Tiga, a small spare sailboat slowly descended into the sea. Click carried the weak Bucky on his back, sat on a small boat that could only seat 3 or 4 people, and slowly sailed towards the direction of Kokoasi village. Now that the 2 great pirates from the East China Sea have been brainwashed, it is time to let them enter Impel Down and fulfill Kyle's ambition of collecting intelligence from all over the world. In order to prevent Buggy from having a personality explosion and running away alone, Kyle asked Kobe to make a box filled with seawater and put Bucky's feet in it. As a result, the extremely weak Buggy had no choice but to let Click carry him to surrender to the Navy. As for why we should go to Kekiaxi village, that's because Smoker, who was originally from the Dusk Pirates, led his fleet to station there after learning what happened in Kokoyasi village, and helped the residents of the sea area to return to normal life. By the way, he also wanted to see what the Storm Witch Church founded by Nojigo would look like. Hope. By the time Click arrived at Kokoyasi village, Baki's feet had not yet been soaked by the seawater. The missionary plan in Advanced City has come to an end. In the captain's room, Kyle happily made a big square root on his little notebook. Immediately, he turned the page, looked at his customized East China Sea schedule, and began to think. There is currently no plan to be implemented in the East China Sea. One is to cooperate with the Kuya Family Chamber of Commerce and form a formal underground weapons dealer. Another thing is to find a time to rob a few factories that manufacture weapons.
Once everything is arranged, it's time for the Dusk Pirates to enter the Grand Line and officially show their talents to the world. Kyle smiled with satisfaction at the plan he had made.
In fact,
according to normal procedures, they should have first seized a few factories that could manufacture weapons, and after having a stable supply of goods, they should have gone to the Chamber of Commerce to discuss cooperation.
However,
considering that Kello from Kaya's family is likely to be the person who matches the Black Butler's character card, Kyle decided to go to Xylub Village first to find out. After all, one day earlier means 2,400 experience points,
equivalent to 2.4 experience books. That costs 10 million Baileys to draw 2 D-level items.
Not practicing for a day is equivalent to losing more than 10 million Baileys.
Time is money, and this is demonstrated to the fullest here with Kyle.
How many weapons would he have to sell to earn back so much Baileys?
Of course.
The premise of all this is that Kuro is willing to join his pirate group and can match the character card.
The former point did not worry Kyle.
After all, CLO, who has already thought about retiring, should not be like Buggy, who was tortured by the Tsukuyami space and refused to let go of his obsession.
The small East China Sea cannot accommodate so many special talents. As for the latter point, page 70.
Kyle felt that there were probably very few people in the world who could simultaneously meet the characteristics of a butler, a devil, and elegance.
If he can't even match CLO, he can only shelve this character card temporarily. On the vast ocean,
the Tiga sailed against the wind and waves at a high speed. The seawater in front of it rolled to both sides under the impact of the hull. At first glance, those who didn't know would think that the hull had left the sea surface. Another 10 days of sailing passed. Kyle and his friends are finally about to reach their destination, Ziliuobu Village.
Ziliuobu Village is an inconspicuous little village in the East China Sea.
The island where this village is located is a small island that is smaller than the town of Will.
If Kaya's family hadn't settled here, life here might even be more difficult than in Will Town.
Because the villagers have almost no need to go out to sea, there is only one decent port on the entire island, which is guarded by several security guards from the Kaya family with guns. The other places where one can go to the island are called ports, but they are actually small beaches not too high.
At this time,
on such a small beach, a young man with a strange long nose like the lying Pinocchio was putting away his monocular telescope with a look of shock on his face, cold sweat on his forehead. Next to this long-nosed boy, there were 3 little kids whose height just reached the boy's thighs. The 3 little ghosts each have their own characteristics, with an onion head, a radish head and a green pepper head respectively. They can be considered an alternative kind of 3 fresh brothers.
And this long-nosed boy is naturally the desperate Usopp who will be offered a bounty of 5 million belly in the New World in the future and has the reputation of God.
Of course, compared to him who has experienced many ups and downs in the future, Usopp now is just a little kid who likes to brag and play pirate house with 3 kids. The onion-headed man standing next to Usopp was the first to notice Usopp's shocked expression. He pushed his round-rimmed glasses and asked curiously,
"Captain Usopp, what did you see? Why do you look so bad all of a sudden?"
"Pirates." Usopp, with a terrified look on his face, subconsciously took a step back, muttering with trembling lips,
"Pat."
The monocular telescope he made himself suddenly fell to the ground with a crisp sound, which pulled him out of his fear.
Usopp was shocked. He reacted instantly and shouted to the 3 little ghosts in panic. "Something bad has happened. There are pirates. Pirates are coming to Ziliuobu Village."
As if he had roared out the fear in his heart, Usopp finally regained consciousness. He quickly pulled the 3 little ones over, then pushed them vigorously and said,
"Hurry! Come back to the village with me. Pirates are coming to the island. Let's flee quickly."
As he spoke, Usopp ran quickly and stumbled towards the village.
"Pirates are coming."
When the 3 little ones heard what Usopp said, they looked at each other in surprise.
At first, they thought that Usopp was teasing them and lying to them.
But the smarter Onionhead picked up Usopp's monocular telescope at the first moment, and then looked in the direction Usopp had just looked.
Immediately, his expression instantly became as panicked as Usopp's. Because in the not-so-clear picture of the telescope,
A warship that was so huge that it was unimaginable was flying above the sea and heading towards them. And above the huge battleship, there was a black flag with a skull printed on it flying.
Pirates! Pirates are really coming! Onion Head was cheered up. He quickly threw down the telescope, then pulled the two little kids beside him and ran after Usopp. It was noon. In the peaceful Ziliuobu village, villagers lead a daily and peaceful life as usual. But at this moment, a roar that seemed to tear apart a throat, like a sharp sword, suddenly broke the tranquility of the small village. Something terrible has happened. Pirates have landed on the island. Everyone, run for your lives. Run for your life. Usopp shouted in shock while hitting a broken gong he had picked up from somewhere. Chapter 66. The author is on fire. Pirates! The busy villagers heard the noise made by Usopp, stopped what they were doing and looked in the direction where the sound came from. But the next second, everyone uttered a disdainful groan at the same time. Bah! This brat, I don't know what's wrong with him today. He just made a scene this morning and now he's here to make trouble again. An old lady patted her aching waist and continued to work. A rough man next to him also echoed perfunctorily. That's it. A similar scene was happening simultaneously in every corner of the village. Thanks to Usopp's consistent good reputation, for every 10 words he said, the villagers might only selectively believe one word. Usopp, who had been shouting desperately in the village for most of the day, saw that no one in the village believed him, and a look of despair immediately appeared on his face. How could this happen? Usopp clenched his fists, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something, and a light suddenly flashed in his eyes. Oh right. And Kaya. If I can make Kaya believe me and let the villagers escape. Usopp thought quickly, but thinking of the incredible speed of the huge battleship on the sea, he didn't know whether he could make it in time. Moreover, with such a huge warship, the pirates on board will definitely not be easy to deal with. But no matter what, this is the last solution he can think of at the moment. Thinking of this, Usopp immediately set off and ran towards the manor on the outskirts of Ziliuobu village. Inside a villa in a suburban manor. The frail Kia lay on the bed, looking out the window. A breeze blew slowly through the clean glass, rustling the leaves outside the window. Today's weather is really nice. Kaya gave a peaceful smile. At this moment, several pieces of gravel suddenly hit the edge of the window frame, making a clear sound. Kuya's face lit up with joy. Hearing the familiar code word, she quickly stood up, ran to the window and pushed it open. Usopp! Kia looked up happily towards the dense tree trunks, but was met with a frowning face. Usopp! Kaya was stunned for a moment. This was the first time she saw Usopp without a smile on his face. Oh no, Kaya! An anxious Usopp didn't care about Kaya's feelings and went straight to the point, shouting. Pirates are coming. They're about to land on the island. What did you say? Kuya's pupils trembled suddenly. As one of the few people in the entire Ziliuobu village who believed in Usopp, she immediately panicked without any hesitation. Fortunately, Usopp had already figured out what to do on the way here. Don't panic, Kia, listen to me. Usopp said seriously, the pirates are coming from the south, they should take some time to land. Hurry up and find your housekeeper and bodyguard, and ask them to take you to leave Ziliuobu village by boat from the northern port. Come back after the storm here has passed. After the pirates land, they will definitely inquire about the location of the rich people in Ziliuobu village first. The most dangerous place nowadays is actually Kaya's manor. Oh, right. Usopp added, I'll have to trouble you, Kaya, to call a housekeeper that everyone in the village knows, and help me inform the villagers about the pirates' arrival. Ah. Kuya nodded and agreed in a daze. I see. The situation was urgent, and Kaya didn't care about her weak body, and quickly acted according to Usopp's instructions. Not a few minutes. A man in a black suit and glasses came out. The person who came was the current butler of the Kuya family, and also the person Kuya trusted the most. The great pirate who was once all the rage in the East China Sea, Black Cat Crow.
Of course, in order to conceal his identity as much as possible, he is now using a pseudonym called Krabatel. When Koro came to Usopp's side and saw his iconic long nose, his brows frowned instantly.
It's you!
Although Koro and Usopp did not know each other, he often went to Shilua village to buy vegetables and had heard some rumors about Usopp. Instantly, a hint of doubt appeared in CLO's eyes, but in the end, he said nothing.
He couldn't afford to gamble.
Seeing that he had worked hard for many years, he was about to gain the trust of the Kuya family and even the entire Chamber of Commerce, and was about to complete the final plan. If he were disturbed by pirates who suddenly appeared at this time, he would be so miserable that he would not be able to cry. Thinking of this, a boiling murderous aura suddenly burst out from Krona's black pupils hidden behind the lenses. He looked at Usopp's back, and his heart began to become active. There was no way he would really let the pirates find Kaya's manor. After all, that was already in his pocket, how could he let it be swept away by pirates now? So if some pirates really find the location of the manor, he doesn't mind taking a risk and killing all the pirates. By the way, kill the little devil in front of you as well. When the time comes, we will say that the pirates were brought here by this kid. Anyway, I heard that this kid's father is a pirate himself.
Everything makes sense. Even if it will be revealed after a long time, that will be after he has seized the property of Kuya's family. Page 71.
With a thought, Chloe made a decision in an instant. But now, he still had to go to Ziliuobu village with the little kid in front of him and evacuate as many villagers as possible.
After all, the fewer witnesses there are, the easier it will be for him to do his job. Soon, Crow and Usopp arrived at the village of Syrib.
This time, with Chloe's endorsement, the villagers finally believed the fact that there were pirates. They panicked and began to pack up their belongings and prepare to evacuate.
And at the same time,
the Tiga, which came from afar, was also controlled by the hurricane and slowly docked on the coast of the island.
3 figures slowly walked down from the huge warship.
A man with his hands in his pockets, a quiet and elegant female swordsman, and a burly man holding a huge bloody axe. The 3 people who landed on the island were Kyle, and Dashigi and Monka who followed him. Because to the people in the Dusk Pirates, Crow's strength was nothing, so Kyle did not mobilize a large force. Bringing Dashigi along was intended to leverage her convincing personality to negotiate for cooperation with the Kaya family. I brought Monka with me because I wanted him and CLO to settle things here.
However,
just as Kyle took the first step onto the island, a stone suddenly flew out from nowhere. Then it hit Kyle quite far to the side in a very outrageous way.
"Don't move!"
A childish voice suddenly sounded. Then a child's roar came from another direction.
"You are about to enter the territory of the Usopp pirates. If you don't want to die, get out of here right now." Chapter 67. Enemies are extremely jealous when they meet. Oh ho! Usopp pirates?
Looking at the shallow sand pit beside him, Kyle's eyes suddenly flashed with a playful look. He deliberately lowered his voice and shouted in the direction of the bushes.
"This is a declaration of war, right? Now that we've already attacked, we're going to have to fight with our lives. Dashigi, draw your sword." "As you command, Captain."
Dashigi, who was standing next to Kyle, smiled. She had already mastered the observation haki and had long sensed the figures of the 3 little ghosts hiding behind the bushes.
The snow-white Zanpaku blade slowly unsheathed. All of a sudden,
with Dashigi as the center, the entire coast was suddenly swept by a huge wind pressure for no apparent reason. The hurricane created by spiritual power blew the trees rustlingly, and large pieces of leaves flew backwards like knives.
Ouch! It hurts.
3 short figures suddenly jumped out from the bushes.
They are Usopp's 3 capable men.
Under Tashigi's spiritual pressure, the 3 little ones even lost the instinct to escape. They sat on the ground in fear, unable to stand up. Kyle took a step forward and suddenly took out a rope from his backpack that he had found at some point, with a sly smile on his face. He loves scaring kids and stuff like that.
Interesting. So you are the Usopp pirates, right? Your captain defeated 50 ships of our Dusk Pirates alone last time. Today, I will use your lives as compensation. Ah, No.
Although the De Sancien brothers didn't know when their boastful captain became so awesome, they still hugged each other in fear and screamed. But Kyle didn't care and quickly tied the three little ghosts together and handed them to Monka. It seems that our arrival has been discovered, Captain. Monka took the rope casually, and lifted the three little ones in front of him and looked at them as if they were some merchandise. Dashigi pushed up her glasses and said, I hope it didn't cause too much impact on the villagers of Ziliuabu village.
I guess it's unlikely.
Kyle glanced at the three little ones who were so scared that they couldn't speak, and chuckled. Only the three little ones are here, but Usopp is not here. Although it is possible that Usopp is still unaware of their arrival, the greater possibility is Usopp had returned to the village and was shouting the pirates are coming.
After a while,
in the deserted village of Silab, only Chloe and Usopp who came to report the news were left here.
Hey Krabatel, the pirates are coming soon. Why don't you run?
At the entrance of Ziliuabu village, Usopp's legs were shaking, his whole body was swaying, and he turned his head to look at Crow who was standing next to him with a calm expression. Although he didn't know why Kaya's housekeeper didn't evacuate with the villagers, but insisted on dragging himself along to wait for the pirates to arrive. But for the sake of face, he chose to stay. Soon, three strange figures appeared in the sight of Usopp and the others.
The first to come over were a handsome man and a beautiful woman.
The man was casual and elegant, while the woman was solemn and quiet.
The two were talking and laughing.
If there wasn't a burly man with a bloody giant axe replacing one of his arms behind them, and three little ones hanging behind him, Usopp might actually mistakenly think that they were a couple going out on a trip or something like that.
Coming.
Even though every cell in Usopp's body was telling him to escape at this moment, he ultimately did not choose to escape. But when Kyle and others came closer, his expression suddenly became extremely tragic.
Kyle.
As the most powerful pirate in the East China Sea, Kyle's appearance is not only known to everyone in the East China Sea, but also a household name. Instantly, a chill ran through Usopp's brain. Even CLO beside him showed a shocked and conflicted look at this moment.
Damn it!
Why is it this guy? Chloe, who originally planned to kill the pirates here, suddenly felt a buzz in his head. As one of the rare intelligent talents in the pirate world, Chloe is not like those pirates like Click, who are arrogant and think they are the best in the world. And it was precisely because he realized his shortcomings in advance and knew his limits that he had the idea of retiring. So the moment he saw Kyle, Chloe took a step back unconsciously. Although he still couldn't get what he wanted after so many years of hard work, it was indeed hard for him to accept.
But that's better than losing your life. His eyes turned and he immediately stepped back. But at this moment,
Kyle and the other two who were walking from a distance seemed to have discovered some target and suddenly walked quickly in their direction.
A bad premonition suddenly came over Chloe's heart.
Before he could react, Kyle and the other two had already quickly arrived not far from him.
Interesting, I didn't expect to meet you here, Captain Crow. Chloe. What the hell? Why would he know my identity? CLO was greatly shocked. Hey, sir, have we met before? Chloe asked in a self-deceiving manner, pretending that he didn't hear Kyle's words. We? Kyle smiled slightly, we have indeed never met.
However, one of my subordinates seems to have a deep connection with you.
Monka!
Kyle shouted, and Monka behind him suddenly threw the three little ones gently to the ground, then shook the bloody giant axe and walked in front of CLO.
Chloe! You should not have forgotten me yet. Monka opened his mouth wide and gave CLO a creepy laugh. You are. Crow's eyes trembled. Although 2 years have passed, he has not forgotten Monka's appearance. Exposed. A thought suddenly came to CLO's mind. Strike first is the strongest. Almost in an instant, CLO used his famous skill, the silent step. His figure quickly disappeared from the spot and turned into a blurry shadow that appeared beside Monka. A sharp dagger was pulled out from somewhere and stabbed towards Monka's neck. Put.
Red blood gushed out, followed by a pungent smell of blood.
Successful.
Chloe sneered. But suddenly, a pair of strange scarlet eyes appeared in his sight. At the same time, a whistling sound breaking through the air came to his ears.
Not good. Chloe instantly crouched down and, using the inertia of his body, retreated backwards.
And the next moment, the axe blade emitting red light suddenly chopped down the place where he had just been.
Yo-ha? You dodged it?
With a dagger stuck in his neck and blood spurting out, Monka turned around and revealed a crazy smile. This situation is comparable to the famous scenes in bloody movies.
They say enemies get jealous when they meet. Chapter 68. But Monka's jealousy at this moment was indeed a bit too much.
The broken skin healed slowly, and soon the dagger was squeezed out of the body, falling to the ground with a clang sound. This sound was like pressing a strange time-stop button.
All of a sudden,
the whole world fell silent.
Chapter 68. Six Staff Light Prison. Monster.
Although the timid Usopp hasn't figured out what is going on, when he saw such a horrifying scene, his little heart started beating wildly. Usopp's 3 younger brothers were so frightened that they passed out.
Hey Monka, you scared the kid.
Kyle pointed at the 3 little ones who had already started foaming at the mouth. Considering that he would have to cooperate with Kaya and the others in the future, it would be better not to cause any trouble. After Kyle's reminder, Monka, who had originally shown his sharp fangs, suddenly paused. Then he put away his crazy face and raised the corners of his mouth slightly.
I'm sorry, Captain Kyle.
It's just that I finally got to meet this guy, CLO.
I'm a little too excited. Kyle nodded. Yeah, I know. But let's get this over with quickly.
After all, he was the culprit who caused major changes in Monka's life, so it was understandable that he was a little emotional.
Copy that, Captain Kyle.
After receiving the order, a Kagun tentacle suddenly popped out from behind Monka and waved in the air. And on his hand axe, the strange substance like capillaries suddenly expanded and grew rapidly. Soon, a huge flesh and blood axe of jaw-dropping size came into the world. The size of the giant axe is even bigger than Monka himself. It looks like an axe, but in fact it is more like a thick shield, blocking Monka firmly in front of him. From time to time, flashes of blood would appear on the terrifying axe blade, as if it were alive, breathing and beating constantly. This is the product created by combining the Cook's Black Box that Kyle had drawn before with Monte Cristo. The Quinqua Black Box produced by the system has the function of combining the characteristics of the host to generate a perfectly matching Quinqua weapon. There is no doubt that this strange giant flesh and blood axe in front of him is the best weapon for Monka. After equipping the B-level weapons, Monka's total qualification also increased from 270 to 310. In addition, he has reached level 43, so his strength has reached the level of a pirate with a bounty of hundreds of millions. He is the kind of powerful player who is qualified to be named a supernova after entering the Grand Line.
What?
Monka exhaled a stream of scarlet air, his eyes flashing with ferocity, and laughed at CLO.
Come on, Captain Crow. It's time to settle the debt you inflicted on me. Boom! The ground suddenly let out a wail. Monka, wielding a huge axe blade, stepped on the ground and created a deep crack, then rushed directly towards CLO. What a joke! A look of fear suddenly flashed behind the clean lenses. CLO didn't have time to think and subconsciously launched the silent step. Pang! After a loud bang, the earth shook and rocks splashed. The huge axe blade directly cut a huge gully at the entrance of Ziliuabu village. The violent impact was like a hurricane, surging towards both sides of the giant axe. In the wave of the impact, a disheveled black figure rolled on the ground for dozens of times before he jumped up and stabilized his body. I can't beat him. It's impossible to beat him. There was no need for a head-on confrontation. Just by looking at the horrific phenomenon caused by Monka's casual attack, CLO knew that he was no match for Monka. Escape! You must escape immediately. Almost in an instant, Chloe had made up his mind. Compared with one's own life, a few years of sleeping on straw and eating bitter food does not seem to be very important. Whoosh! While Monka was pulling the giant axe out of the ground, Chloe launched the silent step again. Although he couldn't control this move well during the battle.
But if he only used it to escape in a straight line, he could still barely use the silent step several times in a row. The boats that the villagers used to escape may not have all left yet. If he was fast enough, he could easily steal a sailboat. Once he reached the sea, it would be extremely difficult for Monka to find him. It sounds complicated, but it all happened in an instant. When Chloe turned around and ran away without hesitation, even Kyle, who was watching the fight nearby, was stunned. This guy. He opened his lips slightly, and finally didn't know what to say, and sighed inexplicably. You ran away without hesitation. You really don't act like a pirate at all. You really have lost your dream. Dashigi, don't let him get away. He's worth at least a devil fruit. Clear. Dashigi, who was on standby, nodded and took several steps at once. With the same whoosh sound, a figure instantly shot out and chased after the fleeing CLO. Compared to Crow's silent step, Dashigi, who has undergone systematic training and has a strong physical foundation, undoubtedly has a more advanced grasp of shaving. In a flash, Dashigi was already beside Crow. There was not much expression on the quiet girl's face, but her speed and the spiritual pressure condensed on her body were enough to shock CLO. How is this possible? He was shocked, as if he was caught having an affair by his victim, and a look of astonishment immediately appeared on his face. But at this moment, Dashigi had already arrived in front of him and pointed in his direction. 61 of the Binding Dao, 6 Stanlight Prison. Aha! 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 The moment the words fell, 6 golden light rods suddenly appeared around Chloe, and then pierced through his joints at a speed that Chloe could hardly react to. Bang 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 bang. The straight light rods intertwined with each other, forming a perfect light prison, which controlled CLO firmly in place, unable to move at all. Dashigi clapped her hands lightly and blew a breath at her fingertips which were free of any smoke. It's done! Damn it! What the hell is this? Controlled by the spirit light staff, CLO twisted his body vigorously. But in the face of the absolute power gap, he couldn't even break free from one of the 6 light rods in the light prison. Even if. This is just a ghost technique that Dashigi casts out without chanting. At this time, Kyle and Monka also walked slowly from not far away. Kyle had a smile on his face, but Monka looked ashamed. This should have been an opportunity for him to show his strength, but he didn't expect it to end up in such an embarrassing situation. Looking at CLO, who was already firmly pinned down, even if he were asked to beat him up again, he was not in the condition to do so. The Kagun weapons on his body slowly disappeared as his fighting spirit faded, and he returned to his normal human state. Who are you guys? What's your purpose here? Seeing Kyle coming over, CLO, who already knew that he was no match for this group of guys, chose to give up resistance. He is not an idiot, nor is he a pirate who only knows how to fight and kill. The opponent's strength and means were far beyond his imagination. If they wanted to kill him, he would have no chance to resist. Kyle came in front of Chloe with a faint smile on his face. Strange, I thought you knew our identities very well. We are the Dusk Pirates. As for the purpose... Kyle's eyes flickered slightly as he looked at the interface showing, compatibility equals 85% in the system. He immediately smiled and stretched out his hand to Chloe and said, "It might be a little complicated overall. But come join my pirate group, Koro." Chapter 69, Koya, Let's Talk? What? CLO was suddenly stunned, with a look of surprise and doubt, and he seemed to doubt his ears. He looked at Monka, who had just chopped a deep hole in the ground, and then looked at Dashigi, who had easily caught up with him and used magical magic. Chloe couldn't understand why a big shot who controlled such a group of powerful subordinates like monsters would invite him. Why? Chloe raised his head and looked at Kyle with a dim expression, but found that the other party was also looking at him. For some reason, at this moment, he actually had a strange feeling, as if he was a piece of merchandise placed in the window, waiting to be picked by customers. The customer standing in front of him showed a satisfied expression on his product, as if he was ready to take it home. What on earth do these guys want to do? CLO was filled with doubts. But Kyle smiled. Why?
How can there be so many whys in the world? He gave me a kind look.
All you need to know is that my crew member Monka has a grudge against you.
If you can't be ours, then we can only make you a dead person. How is it? Are you satisfied with this answer?
If it were someone else, Kyle might have made up a lie and said something like I see you have talent. But for CLO, especially CLO who was caught by them, there was no need for him to waste his breath. Anyway, even if he said it, with CLO's intelligence, he would definitely not believe his nonsense.
Gudong.
After hearing Kyle's frank words, CLO suddenly broke out in a cold sweat and trembled all over under the hot sun.
Yes, it seemed that he had no choice. Page 73. After hesitating for a moment, Chloe realized the reality and nodded slowly. His eyes flashed and he said resignedly, I understand. If you don't mind, sir, I am willing to follow you. All of a sudden,
the black butler character card in Kyle's system, which was originally gray and white, suddenly lit up at this moment and became loadable.
Kyle knew instantly that Koro had joined his pirate group sincerely. He raised the corner of his mouth and patted CLO's shoulder. Don't worry. You won't regret your decision today. Kyle gave Dashigi another look, and she understood instantly.
She waved her hand and dispersed the 6-rod light prison that trapped Crow.
At the same time, it also established CLO's identity as a toolman number 7. However, considering that there would be a lot of things to do later, Kyle did not load the character template for CLO directly here. He slowly turned around and shifted his gaze to Usopp, who was at the entrance of the village with the 3 unconscious little ones. A flash of light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Although Usopp, like Nami and Zoro, is an important character who is expected to play a decisive role in the fate of the world, Kyle has no intention of bringing him into the Dusk Pirates. Different from Kobe's common appearance and fighting style. Even if Usopp possesses the rare special observation hockey talent and the world's top sniping ability. But his appearance and fighting style are so strange that Kyle couldn't think of what kind of character card would match him. If you can't become a tool, you are not qualified to board the Tiga. This is the hidden rule that Kyle set in his mind for the Dusk Pirates. However, not allowing Usopp on board does not mean that he has no value. To know. Usopp's father, Jesus Boo, is one of the founding members of the 4 Emperors, the Red Hair Pirates. The relationship between Usopp and his father may serve as a bridge of communication between him and the 4 Emperors pirate group. The opportunity to talk to the 4 Emperors pirate group should be quite rare for the Navy, right? Kyle thought to himself. Of course. In addition to Usopp's hidden value, Kyle actually values his ability to manufacture weapons and ammunition. Looking back at Usopp's journey in the plot, from the lead bullets and chili powder at the beginning, to the Firebird star that runs through the world government's flag, and the seeds of the magical plants that can grow rapidly in the later period. Usopp's skill in making ammunition is not the best in the world, but it is definitely far beyond the level of an ordinary master. Once we have a weapons manufacturing factory, we can consider arranging a position for Usopp such as factory director. I believe that as he loves to brag, he will not miss such a good opportunity to show off and will work hard to shine in his position. The thought flashed through his mind, and under Usopp's horrified gaze, Kyle walked directly in front of him. You are the Captain Usopp they are talking about, right? He smiled and held out his hand. Meet me, I'm Kyle, the captain of the Dusk Pirates. Scare. When Usopp saw Kyle's move, his face instantly turned pale, and he took several steps back with trembling body. You, don't come here. Although everything happened too suddenly and he still hasn't figured out what was going on, this does not affect Usopp's fear of Kyle at all. He shouted in panic. I am Usopp, a great pirate with 80 million subordinates. Even if you are the great pirate Kyle, I won't take you seriously. Forehead. Kyle, who was reaching out his hand into the void, had a frozen expression on his face, and he felt inexplicably embarrassed as he looked at the funny Usopp. Never mind. He was familiar with Usopp's character and knew that after what he had just seen, it would probably take a lot of effort to communicate with him normally. Kyle gave up communicating with Usopp and looked at Crow again, saying, Crow, take us to Kaya's manor first. Manor? Hearing the word Kia, A flash of surprise flashed in CLO's eyes again. Then he understood instantly. It turns out that his new boss also came for Kia's assets? Damn! I am so unlucky, I got into such a disaster. After sighing in his heart, Chloe quickly put on his new identity, like a perfect butler, and explained to Kyle. Lord Kyle, if you want to find Kaya's family, you may need to wait a moment. Because Usopp had discovered the arrival of several adults, Kaya's family and the villagers of Ziliuobu village had already fled the island by boat at the northern port. If you want to look for Kaya's family, I can use Den Den Mushi to contact them and tell them that the danger is over and they can come back without worry. Yeah. Kyle nodded, not feeling weird. Let's do as you say. Wait. What are you going to do to Kaya? At this time, Usopp, who was standing by, heard the conversation between Kyle and Crow, and immediately shouted in worry. At the same time, he raised his slingshot and aimed at Kyle and others. Not bad? You dare to draw your weapons on us? Kyle praised appreciatively. But just as he finished his words, a huge axe had already hit Usopp's nose hard. TSK. Looking at Monka, who had put away his hatchet, Kyle shook his head and sighed. It's a pity that you used your courage in the wrong place. Monka, tie up this guy and those 3 brats and take them over together. As you command, Captain. A few hours later. In the Kia family's manor. Under the protection of a group of bodyguards, Kia and her companions carefully returned to the familiar manor. Looking at the manor that had not changed at all, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Meili, the housekeeper with a sheep's head and suspected to have the genes of the fur tribe, slowly pushed open the door of the villa. After looking through the crack in the door and looking around the inside of the villa, she breathed a sigh of relief. So far so good. It seems that the pirates did not find the manor. Crab 8, are you in there? We're back. Squeak. As she spoke, Meili slowly pushed open the door of the villa. But the next second, Kaya and all the members of Kaya's family who were standing at the door were stunned. As the door opened, bright sunlight shone into the dim living room. All of a sudden, everything in the living room appeared completely within everyone's sight. On the sofa in the hall, a handsome young man was sitting with his legs crossed and facing them in a relaxed manner. Next to the young man was a girl with glasses holding a long sword, and a man with an axe who did not look like a good guy. Their trusted butler, Mr. Krabatel, was elegantly brewing black tea for the 3 people present. This scene was as if some important guest had come to Kaya's house and the butler was warmly entertaining them. Kaya and the others would have thought so if it weren't for Usopp and the 3 little ones who were lying on the carpet, struggling and shaking their heads at them, signaling them to run. Hey Miss Kia, don't stand at the door, please come in. Seeing the door opened, Kyle immediately put down the tea in his hand with a smile and greeted Kaya and others outside the door. Kaya. Chapter 70 PUA Master. What's going on? Looking at the strange scene in front of her, Kuya suddenly panicked. She first looked at her most trusted butler, Krabatel, but what she got was an extremely cold and unfamiliar face. Whether Chloe was willing or not. Since he had already decided to join the Dusk Pirates and become a pirate again, there was naturally no need for him to continue playing the game. In the past 2 years, he had long been fed up with taking care of this sickly rich girl. To think that he, a great pirate from the East China Sea, could gain the trust of the entire Kaya family in just 2 years. This shows how outrageous his efforts in the past 2 years have been. It's a pity that up to now, all of this has come to nothing. At this time, a bodyguard who realized something was wrong quickly walked up to Usopp and removed the gag from his mouth. Usopp, who regained his freedom of speech, immediately shouted at Kaya with all his heart broken. Kia! Run away! They are pirates! They are all pirates! Your butler is in league with the pirates! During the time he was tied up, Usopp had figured out the whole story. Although he lives in this small village, his understanding of the outside world far exceeds that of ordinary villagers. Black Cat Crow. The great pirate from the East China Sea who was captured by the Navy 2 years ago. In the past, he might not have remembered that there was such a guy whose bounty had been revoked. But from the conversation between Kyle and CLO just now, He has remembered everything. There is a terrifying pirate hiding in Kaya's home. Terrible. How terrible. Pirates. Kaya's eyes widened instantly, and she looked up in disbelief at CLO, who was pouring tea for Kyle. No. No. Impossible. This can't be true. For a moment, Kuya, who was not very strong physically and mentally, felt that her world was collapsing. Her head sank and she leaned back suddenly. Fortunately, the sheep-headed woman Mary was quick-witted and supported her young lady. Then she looked at Kyle and others sitting in the hall with an angry and fearful look. Page 74. At this time, Kyle, who was sitting in the C position, suddenly laughed and said, "Don't be so nervous, Miss Kaya. We may be pirates, but we are not here to rob you. As for Chloe, it's just a coincidence. Dashigi, go and treat our Miss Kaya." Kyle waved his hand and put on a kind tone. After receiving the order, Dashigi suddenly shot out a gentle green light from her hand and shot into Kaya's body. Although Huidao cannot cure the disease in Kuya's body, the gentle life energy can somewhat strengthen Kuya's physique and make her less likely to faint. By the way, Dashigi also stretched out her hand and swung out a spirit light blade, cutting the ropes that bound Usopp and the three little ones. Previously, they had not untied him because they thought they were too noisy. Now that Kaya is back, they can officially start the cooperation talks as planned. Kyle nodded, gestured to Kia at the sofa in front of him, and immediately began to explain. "Miss Kia, this blow may be too great for you. But the fact is, your most trusted butler, Krabatel, is actually a vicious pirate. In order to seize your family's property, he has been acting as a steward since 3 years ago. His goal is to seize your family's property legitimately through normal legal means." How could this happen? This can't be true. With the help of the goat-headed man and Huidao, Kia slowly stood up again, tears welling up in her eyes. She looked at CLO, hoping to get a negative answer from him. She wanted CLO to say that all this was a conspiracy by the pirates, who forced him to become like this. But what she saw was a pair of eyes filled with disdain and disgust. At this moment, Dashigi, who came to Kaya's side, suddenly took out a bounty order from his arms. The face above was exactly the same as Chloe's, which completely dispelled the last hope in her heart. Dashigi pursed her lips but said nothing. The ultimate reason for all these tragedies is actually because the Navy is not capable enough and is not strict enough against pirates. She felt guilty for her previous life as a Marine. Kia. Usopp, who was untied, stood up and walked to Kaya worriedly, but he also didn't know what to say. Kyle leaned back slightly, and said with a slightly sad face, "Ms. Kia, I am deeply sorry for what happened to you. But it's even more regrettable that CLO still has some value to me, so I can't bring him to justice like the Navy can." He tapped the coffee table in front of him and said, "We came here today mainly to talk to you about another matter. I want to cooperate with the Kaya Company in the name of the Dusk Pirates." Cooperation? Why? Kaya raised her head with tears in her eyes. She looked at Kyle in confusion, her eyes full of bewilderment. "Why should you cooperate with me? And why should I cooperate with you? Why?" Kyle smiled faintly. "It's the same boring question again. Miss Kia, your parents really protected you too well, so you never knew that there are not so many whys in this world. Not everything needs a reason, and not everyone is born with the same carefree life as you." Snapped. Kyle suddenly leaned forward, looked directly at Kuya, and whispered, "Have you ever thought that, in fact, you have no reason to reject me now? If it weren't for our presence, you would still be kept in the dark by Chloro, obediently following his plan until his ambition is achieved. Even he can only stay by my side obediently now. Do you think I don't have the ability to control you?" Kyle sighed softly. "In other words, do you think that you, with such a rich family background, really have the ability to protect this family business? To put it bluntly, if Chloe hadn't been helping you manage the Chamber of Commerce over the years, your Chamber of Commerce might have been disbanded long ago. How can you lie comfortably in a luxurious manner and live a life of luxury? I'm not trying to excuse the bad guys. Even though I'm a pirate, I'm disgusted by the burning, killing, and looting. But that's the truth. The cruelty of the world is right in front of you. In order to seize your family business, CLO has taken on many responsibilities for you that you are unable to bear. And now, with Chloe's departure, this important responsibility will fall back on you. Ms. Kia, have you ever thought about how to face the employees of the Chamber of Commerce next? Have you ever thought about doing something for the men who trusted your father and mother? Kyle leaned forward and looked directly at Kuya. Under his continuous questioning, Kaya suddenly became flustered. I don't know. I don't know what to do. Just as Kyle said, due to physical reasons, Kaya has always been like a baby in swaddling clothes. After his parents died, CLO quickly took over everything in the Chamber of Commerce. It was not until today that she realized that she didn't even know where her daily food, clothing, and other expenses came from, let alone what industries her own Chamber of Commerce had. Kaya looked at Kyle in confusion. But at this moment, Kyle, who had just looked stern, suddenly broke into a warm smile. That's right. You don't know. He suddenly extended a hand of friendship to Kuya and said gently. So you need to make a change. Next, I will teach you how to become a strong woman who leads the Chamber of Commerce. The strongest pirate group in the East China Sea will back you up and protect your Chamber of Commerce. Believe me. It won't be long before you and your Chamber of Commerce will become the brightest morning star in the East China Sea. Looking at the smile on Kyle's face. Although Kuya didn't know what she was thinking at this moment, she inexplicably felt that the man in front of her would not hurt her. After hesitating for a moment, Kuya nodded gently and said softly, I am willing to cooperate with you. Chapter 71 Black Butler, Crow. A small, tender hand reached out and shook Kyle's. That's it. Kaya somehow came to a cooperation with Kyle. No. Cooperation is when both parties are equal in strength. Now Kaya, along with her Chamber of Commerce, has chosen to become Kyle's vassal. At least one thing Kyle said touched Kaya's heart. That is, she has no choice now. Behind Kaya, Mary and Usopp looked at each other, feeling that the development of the situation was beyond their understanding. But Kyle has more important things to talk to Kaya about now, and has no time to care about Usopp and the others. Next, he told Kaya all about his plan to sell weapons. When the kind-hearted young lady heard Kyle say that he would only sell weapons to civilians, her eyes suddenly lit up, and she seemed to be even more convinced that Kyle was a good person. The only thing that embarrassed her was the butler Krabatel, who used to be obedient to her, has now become a fawning subordinate to Kyle. In fact, CLO was feeling really up at this moment. He originally thought that Kyle wanted to rob Kaya's family's property, and as the steward of Kaya's family's property, he could naturally help a lot in this regard. But judging from the conversation between Kyle and Kaya just now, things don't seem to be the case at all. His new boss, Kyle, the great pirate at the center of the East China Sea, actually said in person, I hate burning, killing and looting. This completely shattered CLO's three views. After hearing that Kyle and Kaya were working together to use the power of Kaya's Chamber of Commerce to sell weapons to civilians at a low price, he was sweating profusely. Something is wrong. 9 out of 10 things are wrong. This new boss of mine, how can this be considered a pirate's job? Compared with the pirate Kyle, all the Navy officers in the East China Sea should just jump into the sea and commit suicide. Suddenly, CLO suddenly thought of the two people who followed Kyle. Dashigi, Monka. One of them was a female Navy girl who was kidnapped from Rogue Town by Kyle 2 months ago. Later, for unknown reasons, she followed Kyle and became a pirate. And Monka is the colonel of the naval base. Although the newspapers said that he was found out for his tyranny and then fled. But Chloe has not forgotten that 2 years ago, Monka was still a righteous Navy man who hated pirates to the core. At this moment, CLO seemed to have grasped some key point, but he didn't dare to think about it or ask. He could only try his best to demonstrate his value and help Kyle plan the future business empire, but at the same time he was worried that he was of no use and would be easily killed by Kyle. After all, he is not a good person. After half a day's work, Kyle and Kaya finally decided on the first step of the Chamber of Commerce reform. In fact, except for Kyle revealing a few cards he held in his hand at the beginning, it was CLO who helped with planning throughout the whole process. As for another major participant, Kuya, all she has to do is nod and say yeah, and that's all. Although Kyle did not have a weapons factory at that time, he directly classified the several factories he learned from Click as his own property and asked CLO to arrange them. The plan is simple, but the complexity lies in how to mobilize manpower, how to arrange ship operations and other miscellaneous matters. Fortunately, CLO took care of all these things on his own. With his understanding of the Kuya family chamber of commerce, these questions would not be difficult for him at all. He might just have to stay up a few nights and lose a few hairs. Eventually, Kaya's Chamber of Commerce was officially renamed the Stormwitch Chamber of Commerce, in order to cooperate with the newly established Stormwitch Church. After all, they were going to spread something that could easily kill people on a large scale, so they had to use Nami's power of faith to select qualified collaborators. We must not let these cheap weapons fall into the hands of those with ulterior motives. The Chamber of Commerce's current goal is to first arrange the sea area where Kokoasi village is located and all the villages with Stormwitch Church strongholds. Page 75. The first business after the Chamber of Commerce reform was done using the materials Kyle and his team had looted from the 16th Naval Branch base. Soon, with Kaya's signature and permission, batches of documents were sent by the Manor's bodyguards to the Chamber of Commerce's properties across the East China Sea. 2 years later, another major change occurred in this Chamber of Commerce. It's just that the old employees of these Chambers of Commerce would never think that. Because of this strange reform, their Chamber of Commerce has since soared to the sky and completely squeezed into the stage called the world. In the afternoon. Because today, Dashigi and Monka had wasted a lot of their training time. After the matter was settled, Kyle asked them to return to the training room and continue their training. On his side, he also brought Chloe onto the Tiga and came to his captain's room. Kyle and Chloe sat down at either end of the desk. Kyle was the first to praise. Yes, I am very satisfied with your handling of the Chamber of Commerce's affairs. It seems that it is indeed a great idea to let you join. Thank you for the compliment, sir. Chloe quickly stood up and agreed in panic. But at this moment, Kyle's tone suddenly paused. But... Gudon. Chloe choked with sobs and kept shouting in his heart. It's coming. Is it coming? He had made the planning of the Chamber of Commerce almost perfect and had taken notes. That is to say, even if he was not there at this time, as long as he followed his plan, the Chamber of Commerce would still develop in an orderly manner. This also means that his value of use is almost gone. Life or death depends on this time. Seeing the panic on CLO's face, Kyle seemed to have guessed something and raised his lips slightly. Then he continued. But your current strength is still too weak. Since you have joined my pirate group, let me grant you another chance. As he spoke, Kyle suddenly realized something and opened his backpack directly, then selected Black Butler's character card from CLO. A dark stream of light suddenly flew out and went straight into CLO's brow. In an instant, Chloe seemed to have fallen asleep, and his eyes became blurry in an instant. But his consciousness suddenly fell into chaos. This is an endless void, there is no concept of time and space, so naturally there is no such thing as matter. As if born out of thin air, CLO's consciousness appeared here, gained some evil power, and began to fall asleep from then on. Then, I don't know how long it took, but a voice suddenly broke the silence. Come join my pirate group, Koro. The figure of a man broke into this void and directly connected with CLO, who was born here. In an instant, the contract was concluded. And CLO successfully acquired a new identity. From this moment on, he is the Dusk Pirates' Black Butler, Koriko. The goal is to become Kyle's sword and achieve all his goals by any means necessary. Chapter 72. The cook is in place, 5K. CLO slowly opened his eyes and looked at Kyle blankly. Just now, he seemed to have experienced a wonderful life. He has become a strange creature called a demon, and seems to have signed some kind of mysterious demonic contract with Lord Kyle. The content of the contract is? As a demon, I have to become Lord Kyle's butler, complete all his requests, and then, that's it. CLO. Why is such an outrageous contract that sells a devil like me called a devil's contract? Which side is the real devil? Hey! CLO was puzzled. But when he looked up and saw Kyle smiling at him, he subconsciously stood up straight and bowed like a good butler. Master Kyle, thank you for your gift. Although he didn't know what changes had happened to his body, Chloe immediately guessed by instinct that all this must have been caused by Kyle. Kyle, who was thanked by CLO, now focused his attention on the panel attributes of his new partner. Partner, Chloe, Sebastian Michaelis. Qualification, C. Level, 1. Experience, 0 out of 100. Combat power, 27. Total qualification, 270. Strength qualification, 50. Physical qualification, 70. Agility qualification, 80. Spiritual qualification, 70. Total aptitude 270? Strength 50? Looking at CLO's panel, Kyle immediately had some thoughts in his mind. Well, although it is the same C-level template as Monka, CLO's qualifications are too evenly distributed, and his strength is only 50. It looks like he won't be able to become a main combat member of the Dusk Pirates in the future. Although Monka's overall qualifications are also not high, he has 90 strength and 100 physical talents. Even if his overall strength is poor, in terms of strength alone, he will be able to become a powerful general in the future. This is completely different from CLO's balanced talent distribution. Fortunately, Kyle didn't have much hope for CLO's fighting ability at the beginning. As expected, every profession has its own specialty. He chuckled, looked at the elegant black butler in front of him, and suddenly said, "Chloe, go make me a red wine steak, medium rare, with lots of onions." Steak? What the hell? Lord Kyle, are you asking me to cook for him? But I can't cook at all. CLO was stunned, but some instinct in his body instantly controlled him and made him respond. Okay, my lord. Immediately, CLO left the captain's room and walked towards the kitchen in the cabin. About 30 minutes later, a steaming steak was placed on Kyle's desk. He choked and swallowed his saliva, then skillfully used a knife and fork to cut a small piece of the sizzling steak in front of him and held it in front of him. Looking at the rosy color of the cut and smelling the tempting aroma that kept coming to his face, Kyle's eyes suddenly flashed with anticipation. Put the beef in your mouth. All of a sudden, the aroma of the beef soars gracefully in the narrow mouth along with the bursting of tender juice. Tasty. Kyle's eyes lit up and he exclaimed with heartfelt admiration. After being in the pirate world for so long, this is the first time he has eaten the delicacies from this world. Awesome. It's too shocking. Really. This character card from Black Butler does not disappoint. Just as Kyle had expected. After loading the character template of Sebastian Michaelis, CLO has successfully inherited the basic instincts of this perfect butler. What is the basic instinct of a perfect butler? That means being able to work in the living room, be able to cook in the kitchen, beat up criminals, and fight against hooligans. Not to mention being able to pacify the world with a pen or to decide the outcome on horseback, but one must also have good character, quality, knowledge, and appearance. This is the perfect butler. This is also the main reason why Kyle wants to take CLO as his own even if it will make Kaya sad. It's not that he can't bear to part with this guy CLO. Just before talking to Kaya, Kyle had tested every butler in Kaya's family using Black Butler's character cards. But compared to Chloe, who was once a real pirate, the devil attributes of these ordinary butlers are obviously too low. To know. Sebastian Michaelis made a contract with the anime protagonist and became his black butler at the cost of eating the protagonist's soul. He is the real devil. How could these ordinary housekeepers who have never even killed a chicken or a sheep fit in with this character card? Among this group of butlers, the one with the highest degree of compatibility is only 45%, which is completely incomparable to CLO who has an 85% degree of compatibility. After finishing this dinner, which was not really a dinner, Kyle's gaze towards Chloe suddenly became more passionate. At last. They will finally have a proper cook on their ship. After quickly finishing the steak in front of him, Kyle took the towel handed to him by CLO and wiped the oil stains off his mouth.
He immediately showed a satisfied smile and gave a very high evaluation.
Not bad. This is the most delicious meal I have ever had since I came to this world. Page 76. Your Excellency is overpraised.
Chloe bowed modestly and reached out to clear the tableware. After he collected the tableware, Kyle suddenly stood up, patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile,
That's not an exaggeration. I've decided. Chloe.
From now on you will be the official chef of the Dusk Pirates.
The future of the entire pirate group's food will be left to you. The entire pirate group? The corner of CLO's eye twitched slightly.
Although he still doesn't know how many people there are in the Dusk Pirates, just by looking at this huge battleship, he knows that the number must be considerable.
If he was responsible for the meals for the entire pirate group, wouldn't he be exhausted to death?
CLO wanted to say something to relieve the pressure on himself, or at least ask Kyle to give him a few helpers.
However,
under the influence of the devil's contract, he agreed inexplicably.
Thank you for your trust, sir.
A perfect butler who cannot refuse any request from his master.
Ha ha ha.
Kyle laughed, stood up, and clapped his hands twice in the air.
Clap clap. The next moment, because he had to direct Kaya's employees to move supplies, little Tiga, who had not yet formally met CLO, suddenly teleported into the captain's room. What do you want, Captain?
Little Tiga imitated Kobe's usual behavior, standing up straight and waiting for instructions.
Kyle smiled and pointed at CLO. Let me introduce you to. This is our new partner, CLO. From today on, he will be the only cook on our ship. Tell Kobe that from now on he can be responsible for the sanitation of the ship and he won't have to go into the kitchen anymore. No problem, Captain.
Little Tiga immediately saluted with a serious look, a full moon smile hung on his face under the cloak, and then he greeted CLO cheerfully.
Hello, CLO, I am the ship spirit on this ship. My name is Tiga.
As a ship elf, in addition to upgrading the Tiga, he can also gain strength from the emotions of his companions on the ship towards the ship. So the more people there are on the boat, the happier he is. However, when CLO saw little Tiga for the first time, he immediately showed a look of shock on his face.
Ship spirit. Isn't that a legendary creature?
He blinked, his eyes unconsciously looking at Kyle, and then the shock on his face disappeared instantly.
Correct.
He could even give himself such magical powers. For a mere ship spirit, it was probably not a new thing for his new captain.
After calming down, CLO immediately smiled elegantly like a black butler and said gracefully, Hello, Mr. Tiga, please give me your guidance in the future.
After the two introduced themselves to each other, Kyle spoke again.
Okay, I don't have anything to do here now.
Little Tiga, take CLO to familiarize himself with the cabin, and then have him go to the training room to say hello to everyone.
Yes, Captain.
According to the rules for new partners to board the ship, the popular Little Tiga is still in charge of guiding the newcomers.
After little Tiga and CLO left the captain's room, Kyle opened the dock interface in the system and smiled with relief.
Now that we have found the most important chef, it is time to create a comfortable and healthy dining environment for our partners. As he spoke, he used his mind to click on the kitchen and restaurant in the facility mall.
All of a sudden, a detailed introduction to the two facilities popped up. Facilities, kitchen. Level 1. Experience 0/5. Introduction, a simple cooking place.
Effect, increase the chef's food serving speed by 10%.
Facilities, restaurant. Level 1. Experience 0/5. Introduction, a simple dining place.
Effect, increase the eater's appetite by 10%. In the past, Kyle thought that with Kobe's cooking skills, it would be a waste even if he bought a kitchen and a dining room. After all, if something doesn't taste good, no matter how much you increase your appetite, it still doesn't taste good. Although the food that Kobe made was edible, that was all. Making him increase his appetite for an ordinary dish, Kyle always felt like his mind was being controlled. But with the chef Black Butler, the situation is different. Faced with delicious food, the increased appetite will only make him enjoy it more. And considering that CLO has to prepare 3 meals a day for so many people, this buff in the kitchen that speeds up the preparation of meals is also indispensable.
With delicious food, we naturally need a matching dining environment to be worthy of the delicious taste. There are 2 facilities, each costing 500 W Baileys. Even if they are upgraded directly to level 3, each will only cost 3,500 W Baileys. This is nothing for Kyle, who is now wealthy and powerful. Anyway, there are still 4 empty positions in the facilities column that have not been used. He had a thought. The original kitchen and dining room in the cabin of the Tiga changed instantly. Because Kyle directly upgraded it to level 3, the originally simple kitchen immediately became extremely full. The huge space is filled with a variety of kitchen utensils. Ovens, fryers, steamers. As long as it is used in an ordinary kitchen, it has everything. Restaurants of the same level have also become like kitchens. Not only has the space been expanded to accommodate hundreds of people dining at the same time, but the environment has also become even more Michelin-like than Michelin. The main focus is on making people look like they can't afford to eat. Of course. Kyle, who had not yet visited the place in person, was unaware of all the changes. Because he had already clicked on several other facility interfaces. Kyle has never used the 10 billion Baileys in cash that Monka and Akin brought back. It's not that he forgot. The main reason was that the probability of winning in the last draw was too high, and Kyle was worried that he had used up all his luck in recent times, and he would not be able to get any good stuff in the future. Therefore, in the near future, he plans to accumulate some good luck first, and then participate in the lottery. But this money won't help him if it stays in his hands. After thinking about it, he decided to just use it in one go to benefit the crew members. He took out another 5,000 W Baileys and upgraded both the male and female crew dormitories to level 3. The level 3 crew quarters not only have a magical buff that restores 15% of the status per hour of sleep, but it has also been directly transformed from the original 8-person dormitory into a corridor with 8 small single apartments. Each small apartment is about 50 square meters in size and has a simple structure, not much different from Kyle's level 1 captain's room. But in this way, the crew members of the Dusk Pirates will each have their own room and have their own independent private space. It's a pity that the real estate business in the pirate world doesn't seem to be very hot. If this happened on Earth, just by promoting the gimmick of join a company and get a single apartment for free, I wonder how many freshly graduated college students would be attracted. By the way, Kyle also upgraded the drawing room to level 3, which accelerated their speed in drawing. Then they purchased a steering station and an equipment room, directly occupying the only 2 remaining facility spots. The former can increase the movement speed of the pirate group, and level 3 can directly increase the sailing speed by 15%. For the Tiga at this time, this increased speed is quite impressive. The latter can store some weapons and props that Kyle extracted from the system. There is a special display platform inside, which can show the introduction information of weapons and props to partners, just like the system in Kyle's brain. The weapons in the original system needed to be taught by Kyle face to face, and they had to be equipped on the spot in the partner interface before they were officially handed over to the partner for use, which was very cumbersome. Although ordinary equipment and props do not require such trouble, they still require Kyle to give them face to face one by one. But with this equipment room, as the captain, he can directly throw weapons and props such as the Sunblade, exploding talisman, 3-dimensional maneuvering device, etc. into the equipment room and let his companions choose freely. In this way, when Kyle has more partners in the future, he can save a lot of trouble. The storage space in the equipment room is limited, but it will increase as the level increases. Since all the facilities had been upgraded to level 3, Kyle decided to go all out and upgraded his captain's room to level 3 as well. Originally just an ordinary family's captain's room, after being upgraded to level 3, not only did the space double again, it became a large flat with 3 bedrooms and a living room. Even the decoration instantly became high-end. The previous decoration was just painted wooden boards, and there was no decoration except for a few pieces of furniture. Now it has become an exquisite cottage. At first glance, it looks like walking into an IKEA showroom. What makes Kyle even more excited is the captain's cabin at level 3 was equipped with a large color TV. This way, he can buy some video den mushi in the future and appreciate the art of this world. It's worth the money. After touring all the new facilities on the Tiga, a satisfied smile immediately appeared on Kyle's face. After some operations, he spent a total of over 2.15 million Baileys. For Kyle, who has seen a lot of ups and downs, this little money is nothing. The precious treasures worth 10 billion Baileys that he had looted from Colonel Mouse have been transported to Kaya's home. Prepare to follow the next batch of merchant ships and deal with them all through the channels of the Stormwitch Chamber of Commerce. Page 77. The weapons and ammunition that Kyle looted from the 16 branch bases would be worth at least 15 billion belly even if they were sold to civilians at a very low price. Kyle, who is about to become rich, really doesn't need to care about the small expense of 1 or 200 million. I looked at my captain experience value, 645/2000. Do I need another 13 billion Baileys to reach level 5? Unfortunately, the cash of the Kaya family needs to be reserved for the transformation of the new Chamber of Commerce and cannot be used directly. Otherwise, if we gather together, we can reach level 5 today. Kyle thought silently for a moment, then he clicked on his companion's information and checked their combat effectiveness one by one. Nowadays, because upgrading becomes increasingly difficult, the strength of Dashigi and the others has not changed much for a long time. To date, the highest level Dashigi is only level 45. But her strength has indeed reached the level of a Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters. Even if he reached the Grand Line, he was still considered a prominent figure. Monka, although he was Kyle's second partner, and Kyle also used the experience book to make up for the experience he lost during the period of time he was away on missions, allowing him to level up to 43. However, his combat power is still more than 29,326 lower than that of Dashigi. Now it is, which is only the level of an ordinary billion-level pirate. This is an awkward situation where he is above the level of Major General but not even a Lieutenant General. Zoro and Nami came later. Although they arrived nearly a month later and Kyle did not get them suitable weapons to increase their qualifications, they now have the strength of top major generals with their strong qualifications as S-level characters. Nami relied on the advantage of arriving first and the strength accumulated from the character templates. As for Zoro, he reached this level through the combination of panel strength and his own strength. Speaking of this, we have to mention Sauron separately. Genius is genius. Even though he has only been a member of the Dusk Pirates for a short time. But now, he has successfully mastered the prototype of armament hockey and became the first person in the pirate group to possess armament hockey. In him, Kyle seemed to have seen the possibility of the Dusk Pirates dominating the world in the future. He already has world-class talent, plus a powerful S-class character template. If he could also have a handy S-class weapon. Sauron's future is immeasurable. Chapter 73 Black Gun Island. Compared with Zoro, the ultimate genius, Akin at this time is undoubtedly much inferior. Level 32, Combat Power 17952, barely enough to be a Major General in the Navy headquarters. Nowadays, there are many hidden talents on Kyle's ship. The combat power of 2 Vice Admirals, the combat power of 3 Rear Admirals, plus the power system given by their respective characters. It may not be comparable to the world's top family power like Don Quixote, but if it is against the 7 warlords of the sea power that was pieced together like Baroque works, they could be said to have taken it down as easily as chopping vegetables and melons. Kyle's eyes drifted, looking at his current combat power. 56,825. As the number of his companions increased, his strength finally surpassed Dashigi and he became the top fighter in the Dusk Pirates. And it won't be long before his fighting power will increase significantly again. It's time to confront the top forces in this world. After shutting down all the system screens, Kyle immediately showed a motivated smile on his face. Night. The starry sky descended, and the sky was filled with stars. Under the bright moonlight, silver waves beat against the thick walls of the Tiga. The deck of the giant ship was decorated with lights and tables of delicious food were constantly brought out from the cabin by Kobe and CLO. Soon. A welcome dinner with delicious food, fine wine, handsome men and beautiful women is ready. Kyle raised his glass high and celebrated loudly. Let us welcome our chef, CLO, to officially become one of our members. Oh!
Smelling the aroma of the delicious food in front of them, all the crew members raised their glasses and cheered loudly.
Zoro even raised his arms and laughed, finally I don't have to eat Kobe's cooking. Hey! Brother Zoro, it's so rude of you to say that. Kobe retorted loudly, pounding the table. But what we got in return was laughter and joy. Chloe stood beside Kyle somewhat awkwardly.
At this moment, he could truly feel everyone's welcoming gazes, which made him feel flattered as he had just joined this magical pirate group today. After all, he had just witnessed the sparring between Dashigi and Zoro in the training room with his own eyes. Although Tashigi's overall strength is currently much higher than Zoro's, in terms of kendo alone, the two are currently at the same level. That battle made Chloe feel relaxed and shocked. The loud collisions like thunder and the fierce and domineering slashes thoroughly displayed the true side of the world to him, a frog in the well. After learning that he could gain powerful strength by practicing in this training room, CLO became even more excited. He could feel a brand new world is slowly opening up to him. A night of laughter. Thanks to Crow's cooking skills, everyone in the Dusk Pirates had a wonderful night. Early morning. With the first rays of golden morning sun, the Tiga left the coast of Ziliuobu village and embarked on a new journey. This time, Kyle's target is the underground world. According to the information provided by Click, there are a total of 3 underground weapons production bases and 2 small-scale weapons factories in the East China Sea. The 2 weapons factories are now controlled by 2 local gangs in the East China Sea. They are called gangs, but in fact they are just larger bandit groups. To the current Dusk Pirates, they are just a group of small minions and there is no evidence for them at all. However, there were only 2 small weapons factories, which obviously could not meet the needs of Kyle and the new Chamber of Commerce. They will definitely have to bring the other 3 production bases under their control. Behind the 3 production bases is an underground king called Joker. To Click, Joker might just be a code name. Being so arrogant, he might even think that Joker is a clown who dares not show his true face to others. However, Kyle knew clearly that Joker was one of the 7 warlords of the Seed Doflamingo, the head of the Don Quixote family. Are we finally going to meet the Shichibukai? Kyle's eyes were shining with anticipation. He stood at the bow of the Tiga and looked into the distance excitedly. If he had just traveled through time, he would definitely not be in the same mood as he is now. But now he has a group of such powerful subordinates, and he has the ultimate skills of sure punch, super intuition, and space movement. Even if it was the 7 warlords of the sea, he had nothing to fear. What's more, this is the East China Sea. It's the Navy's territory. No matter how powerful the 7 warlords of the sea are, they can only reach in secretly. And once Kyle and the others are ready to enter the Grand Line, who knows how much their strength will grow. A few days later. Black Gun Island Port. As one of the few ports in the East China Sea where pirates can stay openly, this place is now crowded with various pirate ships of all sizes as usual. Thick billowing smoke enveloped the sky above the island, and the surrounding sea water seemed to be infected as well, no longer its normal blue color, but dull and lifeless. The air was filled with choking invisible particles. Low iron houses with long chimneys were arranged in an orderly manner, dividing the streets. This is one of the famous underground black markets in East China Sea. 1/5 of the illegal weapons and ammunition in the East China Sea are circulated from here. Although there is only one large weapons factory in the center of the island, there are only a few pirates who can directly access the factory. Therefore, various weapons workshops or vendors can be seen everywhere on the streets. Almost every resident here has mastered the skill of making and repairing firearms. On this day, everyone on the island was living a quiet and peaceful life as usual with guns and ammunition. But at this moment, suddenly, a noisy sound was heard from the originally busy port. Attracted by the sound, people immediately turned their heads to look towards the port. The next second, everyone's face was filled with shock. I saw a huge battleship, like an irresistible giant, fiercely piercing into a group of small pirate ships. Several ships nearby were knocked over. That's our ship. A one-eyed captain at the port looked at the pirate ship being squeezed to and fro by the huge warship, and an angry look immediately appeared on his face.
Pirates are naturally hot-tempered people. Now that he saw his pirate ship being hit and rammed by others, how could he suppress his temper? What's the difference between this and being NTR in front of you? Damn you! How dare you ram my boat? No matter who you are, I'm going to make you pay.
As he spoke, the one-eyed captain took out the hand cannon he had just bought on Black Gun Island and was about to step forward to argue. But at this moment, a younger brother next to him suddenly hugged his arm and shouted,
"You can't go. Captain! You can't go. That's the ship of the Dusk Pirates." The Dusk Pirate ship?
The angry one-eyed captain's expression suddenly froze.
He followed his younger brother's instructions and looked up into the sky.
Suddenly, I saw the huge pirate flag in the East China Sea that was as big as the face fruit.
The hollow eyes of the skull, the plain skull head, and the dark dust color on the back, low-key yet meaningful. It was exactly like the photo in the newspaper. Damn it! It's true!
Instantly, the anger of the one-eyed captain subsided, and he patted his younger brother in gratitude and asked curiously,
"Strange, didn't the newspaper say that Kyle was on a small sailboat? It's only been 2 or 3 months, how come it has become a huge battleship? Captain, have you forgotten?" Page 78.
I looked around, then lowered my voice and leaned closer to say,
"Didn't the official newspaper report a few days ago that the Crick Pirates were captured by Navy Captain Smoker? According to the information I got from other gossip media,
the Click Pirates were actually defeated by the Dusk Pirates and had to disband."
What?
The one-eyed captain was so frightened that even the black eye patch on his head was distorted by his frowning brows. He quickly grabbed the eye patch, then moved it to cover his other eye, revealing an expression that said, "That's how it is." I didn't expect that the Dusk Pirates would defeat the overlord of the East China Sea just 3 months after setting out to sea.
It seems that the situation in the East China Sea is about to change. Who says it isn't?
The younger brother scratched his head, moved the direction of his wig, and sighed with his captain.
Chapter 74 Girl Black Flame. Captain Kyle, we're here. On board the Tiga.
Little Tiga controlled the giant ship and slowly docked it at the port of Black Gun Island. A staircase engraved with precious patterns extends abruptly from the deck and descends slowly and steadily to the port. Under the curious, expectant, or greedy gazes of the crowd at the port, Kyle and his group slowly walked down from the Tiga. This time, except for the ship elf who cannot leave the ship, and Kobe who has not loaded the character yet, Kyle and his team are out in full force. Just because just now when the Tiga approached the waters of Black Gun Island, Kyle's super intuition suddenly gave him a vague premonition. It seemed to be telling him that a tough battle was waiting for them on this island.
Kyle naturally believed in the super-intuitive premonition 100%.
Therefore, he did not care whether it would delay his companions' leveling and directly pulled all the combat members down.
Hey! It's really the Dusk Pirates. There's no mistake. The man in the lead is the pirate with a bounty of 3,000 million. Why are they coming to Black Gun Island? Nonsense. Of course they came to Black Gun Island to buy weapons. Big pirates like them must be preparing to go to the pirate dreamland, the Grand Line. Hush. Keep your voice down. They're looking over here. The pirates at the port looked at Kyle and the others and whispered to each other. A scene like Kyle's, reaching the peak as soon as he debuted, is something that almost all the pirates present dream of. Although he had not yet mastered the observation hockey, with his extraordinary perception, the voices of the surrounding pirates did not escape Kyle's ears. However, his expression remained calm and composed. Let's go. Kyle spoke softly, but at this moment a bright light suddenly flashed in the depths of his eyes. Obviously, although he had some concerns about the upcoming tough battle, he was more looking forward to his pirate group's first full-scale war. Walking on the road leading from the port to the central town of the island, except for Chloe and Ajin, almost everyone who came to such a place for the first time showed curiosity and kept looking at the surrounding scenery. Dashigi pouted her lips in disbelief and whispered, "Damn it! There is actually such a pirate gathering place in the East China Sea. Why has the Navy never received any information about it before?"
After visiting Black Gun Island, Dashigi, a former Navy officer, was shocked by the incompetence of the East China Sea Naval Intelligence Agency. However, CLO, who was walking behind Kyle, pushed the frame of his glasses with the base of his white-gloved hand after hearing this, and replied calmly,
"This is normal.
After all, the purpose of the Black Gun Island is to be a breeding ground for pirates.
How could they allow their own navy to wipe out their own organization?" "What? You said this place has something to do with the world government?"
Zoro, who was originally looking at the roadside stall, suddenly turned around with a curious look.
"Of course." Crow nodded gracefully.
As everyone knows, the main source of financial resources for the world government is to collect heavenly gold from more than 170 countries. In order to make these countries willing to pay the heavenly gold, the world government naturally needs a reason to collect protection money.
And pirates, that's the reason the world government came up with.
Only countries that have paid the heavenly gold can be protected by the world government.
If pirates attack this country, the nearby navy will be dispatched immediately.
Hearing this, Nami, who seemed to be thinking about something, suddenly continued. So in this way, some people in power who want to consolidate their royal power and ruling status will try their best to raise enough money for the heavenly gold.
To this end, they can even ignore the living conditions of the people in their own territory and desperately exploit them, until the country's national strength is completely drained by the world government.
So in order to make the countries in the East China Sea pay the heavenly gold voluntarily, even if there are a large number of pirates gathered here, the government agencies will just pretend they don't know.
How could this be? Dashigi looked confused and angry. The others also fell silent, each of them unknown what they were thinking about. It seemed that even Chloe and Akin were slightly moved by Nami's words. But these days, who doesn't have a couple of tragic stories?
Kyle grinned, clapped his hands twice, and said with a smile,
"Okay, don't make the atmosphere so heavy. What the world will become is not something that one or two of you can decide.
Either explode in silence or perish in silence. It turns out that history is just repeating itself over and over again, and we just happen to be standing in this position. There is no need to think too much about the history that has already been decided, because the next history will be written by ourselves."
Kyle, who has a powerful system, is more confident and arrogant than anyone else, but he usually doesn't show it.
But there is nothing wrong in using your pride to say a few nice words to motivate your partners.
Sure enough, after hearing Kyle's immature declaration, the eyes of Zoro and others suddenly flashed.
Even Dashigi, who was feeling sad for the Navy, was aroused. She turned her head and muttered quietly to cover up her restlessness that was inconsistent with her personality.
"Just nice words. Ha, whether it's just a nice word or not, you won't know until you do it."
Kyle reached out and ruffled Tashigi's hair, then stepped forward, looking straight at the huge factory that was emitting billowing black smoke. He lowered his voice and his eyes suddenly became serious. "So, in order to make history go as we wish, we need to find the person in charge of this factory first."
What Kyle wanted was a complete weapons factory. If possible, he even hoped that the factory workshop would not stop production and complete the handover seamlessly. Considering that the factory must be full of gunpowder, which could cause a large-scale explosion if they were not careful, they certainly could not rush in like normal pirates. Directly finding the person in charge and threatening him is undoubtedly the quickest solution. Does anyone have a good idea? Kyle tilted his head slightly and asked the people behind him. However, in the Dusk Pirates, Dashigi is a naive person, Monka and Akin are rough guys, and Zoro is a person with poor sense of direction. At this time, the only ones who can really be of use are Chloe and Nami. In fact, after Kyle asked the question, a light flashed in the eyes of the two men, but just as they raised their hands to express their own plans, suddenly, a lively girl's voice came from the side of the road. "Are you going to look for the person in charge of the factory? Okay?" Kyle was slightly startled, and looked in the direction of the sound. He suddenly saw a girl wearing a cool black leather jacket, black twin ponytails, and a pair of sapphire-like shining eyes jumping out from the side of the road. "You are?" Kyle asked the girl in front of him. The girl walked up to Kyle and the others, waved her fair arms, winked and smiled. "Hello, my name is Hei Yen. I'm sorry to have overheard your conversation,
but please believe that I didn't mean to do that.
Heian pointed at his ears and laughed again.
I am just born with 5 senses that are stronger than ordinary people, so even though I am some distance away from you, I can still hear your conversation clearly.
Kyle nodded slightly. We were just chatting, so we don't mind being overheard. That's great.
The eyes of the girl named Heian suddenly burst into a bright flash. She suddenly took a step forward, swaying her twin ponytails of varying lengths as she approached Kyle. Then she put her hands together, looked at him with admiration as if she were looking at her idol, and said excitedly,
"Either explode in silence or perish in silence." That's a great saying. Lord Kyle is indeed the most powerful pirate in the East Sea.
Even when he was just talking to his subordinates, he could come up with such inspiring words.
Excuse me, Lord Kyle, can I follow you? Chapter 75 Don Quixote Family Cadres, 4.6k. Follow me? A hint of amusement suddenly flashed across Kyle's eyes. This was the first time someone stepped forward and offered to join their pirate group.
This was indeed a novel experience for him.
You? Kyle opened his mouth slightly and was about to say something.
But at this moment, a group of strong men wearing black suits and holding guns, like bodyguards, suddenly ran out from the crowd and headed straight towards Kyle.
As they ran, they shouted loudly, "Miss! Miss!"
Following a series of scattered footsteps, a group of bodyguards in black instantly came to Heian's side, surrounded her tightly, and then looked at Kyle vigilantly.
"Pirates, what are you going to do to our young lady?" A bodyguard with a crew cut and sunglasses suddenly walked out.
Although he did not raise the muzzle of his gun, the finger that had been on the trigger was announcing his power to Kyle and the others.
"Miss?"
Kyle tilted his head and glanced at the black flame behind the man in black, with a questioning look in his eyes.
"Ugh."
Heian sighed, then reached out and patted the shoulder of the bodyguard in front of him.
"Don't be so nervous, Corwaso." Page 79. "If I needed your protection, I would have been sold to Pleasure Street by those pirates last week to serve customers. In front of the strongest pirate in the East China Sea, do you think your 2 broken guns will be of any use?"
As he spoke, Heian had already pushed aside the bodyguard in front of him with a smile on his face, and came in front of Kyle and others again.
"It seems that you are not ordinary, little sister?" Kyle glanced at Black Flame with amusement. Heian immediately spread his hands helplessly inside. "I can't help it. I'm the daughter of the ruler of this island. The daughter of the one in power." Hearing this key word, Kyle's eyes suddenly narrowed. "Then your identity is really more extraordinary than I thought."
The purpose of the Dusk Pirates coming here is to fully control the weapons production base on Black Gun Island.
If what Heian said was true, then her identity would undoubtedly be of great help to them. Even Nami and Chloe behind Kyle had a changed expression at this moment.
If one wants to make this island obedient, keeping the descendants of the person in power under control is undoubtedly a good way to solve the problem once and for all. At this time, Heian did not notice the changes in Kyle and his companions' expressions, and was still complaining to Kyle. "Although my identity seems to be glorious, every once in a while, there is always a group of blind guys who want to kidnap me and blackmail my father. And the strength of people like Heiji is not enough to protect me. So..." A gleam of hope suddenly flashed in the eyes of the twin-tailed girl. She winked at Kyle playfully and continued to pray with her hands clasped together. "Please, Lord Kyle, please let me join your pirate group. With you guys around, there must be no bad guys who dare to attack me again."
"Oh?" Kyle smiled slightly. "So you joined us because you wanted me to be your free tool?" "Of course not."
Heian quickly shook his head, and his 2 long ponytails danced in the air with a silky beauty.
The girl took another step forward. "I am ready, Master Kyle. I've had enough of being a young lady.
I don't want to rot on this island covered by dark clouds for the rest of my life.
And don't underestimate me because I'm a girl. My shooting skills are even better than those of Heiji and the others.
And there's more. No matter what weapon it is, as long as it has something to do with machinery and gunpowder, once I've disassembled one, I can draw the corresponding blueprint.
And my 5 senses are far superior to those of ordinary people. I'm a natural lookout.
The little girl seemed to be afraid that Kyle would reject her, and she listed several of her own advantages one after another. Kyle, who originally just thought it was a bit amusing, suddenly raised his eyebrows after listening to the girl's personal introduction.
Can you draw blueprints of guns? Kyle asked suddenly. Ah.
The girl was stunned for a moment, then immediately nodded.
Yeah, a lot of the weapons on the production line now are pirated by me based on the Navy's firearms. I'm very powerful. I didn't realize you were quite capable. Kilimo stroked his chin and looked at the girl carefully twice. At the same time, he opened Main's character card in his mind and compared it with the girl's. Compatibility equals 56%. 56% fit? If she practices more, she should be able to barely pass. Maybe in the future, a character card more suitable for her will be revealed. It's okay to include her in the pirate group's reserve army first. Also, the talent for drawing gun blueprints. I remember there was a facility in the dock system that could automatically produce weapons based on weapon blueprints. As his thoughts wandered, Kyle's eyes became brighter and brighter, and there was a hint of appreciation in his eyes when he looked at the girl. Kyle nodded and smiled. I will think about it. But before that, since you heard our conversation, you should know what we want to do now, right, Miss Blackflame? Now, take us to meet your father. If the conversation goes well, I will consider letting you join my pirate group. Hi. The girl with twin ponytails showed joy on her face and immediately responded excitedly. But at this moment, the bodyguard Heiji, who had been silent all the time, finally couldn't help it. He interrupted quickly. Wait a minute, miss. Have you discussed becoming a pirate with the master? Besides, the master is meeting an important guest now, we can't disturb him. I'm sick. The black flame girl suddenly turned around, with an expression of disgust on her face that was completely opposite to the one she showed to Kyle and the others. I can go wherever I want. I don't want to stay in this dirty place forever. And for so many years, the factory has been making money based on my drawings. No one has the right to control me. Heian snorted delicately, and under the anxious and helpless gazes of the group of bodyguards, he turned around in an instant, smiled and said, Please follow me, Master Kyle. Okay. Kyle nodded, but he felt in his heart, women are indeed fickle creatures. Seems like a problem child. Dashigi, who was standing by, came close to Kyle and whispered something. Shoo. Kyle smiled and pointed his finger. Have you forgotten that the girl in front of us can hear us talking from more than 10 meters away? Acradine. Dashiki's face instantly turned red, as if she was caught talking bad about someone behind their back. Ha ha ha. Kyle let out a laugh. And Heian, who was walking in front, also trembled slightly twice, obviously trying not to laugh out loud. In fact, Heian is not some crazy girl who worships pirates. Although she has always wanted to leave the island, becoming a pirate is just one of the paths she has planned for the future. What really made her decide to join Kyle's group was actually the conversation that Kyle and the others had just had. With her super hearing, she heard the entire conversation between Kyle and others intactly. A group of pirates actually thought about the working style of the Navy and the world government. This made her feel the extraordinariness of Kyle and his gang. He also felt that the future of the Dusk Pirates would definitely not be confined to the small East China Sea. This is a pirate group with great potential. She, Miss Blackflame, is the daughter of a businessman. When you come across an industry with potential, the earlier you invest, the higher the returns will be. Central Black Gun Island. Inside a tall building surrounded by huge black chimneys. This is where power is concentrated on Black Gun Island. The person in charge of this island, and also Heian's father, is Heian, a well-proportioned old man wearing a blue suit with gold trim. As the ruler of Black Gun Island, he can be said to be the uncrowned king of this island. However, such a man who holds great power now showed a face full of mercenary, ordering his men to open large metal boxes one by one, revealing piles of banknotes full of the smell of copper. Lord Raoji, Lord Mahabais, all the harvest for this season is here, please take a look. Heian showed a servant-like smile on his rather nice face, and pushed the box on the table forward in a flattering manner. Opposite Heishin, sitting on the other side of the negotiation table, was an old man who looked like he was about to die and a burly man in a swimsuit who was even fatter than Heishin. These two people are actually officers from the Don Quixote family, working under Cube Diamante. Rao Ji and Mahabais. At this time, Lao Ji was sitting calmly in a chair with his arms folded across his chest. In fact, this elderly man didn't hear what Hei Xin was saying at all. However, another cadre, Mahabais, frowned instantly when he saw the banknotes in front of him. In an instant, the atmosphere in the entire office became depressing. His face darkened, and he looked angry. Why is there only this much? Didn't I ask the other two factories to send Baileys to you? You guys, are you trying to break the treaty set by Master Joker? No, no, no. Hearing this, Heishin's forehead suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. He quickly stood up and explained. Lord Mahabas, please understand. Even if I have 10,000 guts, I wouldn't dare take the money that belongs to Joker-sama. It's just that the arms trade market in the East China Sea has been sluggish in the past few months. I guess you must have heard that a hero named Smoker from the East China Sea appeared in the Navy and arrested many big pirates from the East China Sea. The Fishman Dragon, the Clown Buggy, and the East Sea Admiral Crick were all arrested by the Navy Captain Smoker one after another, causing many pirates to be afraid to show their heads and keep quiet. If they don't use weapons and ammunition, our factories will naturally have no business. Especially Admiral Click of the East Sea. His pirate group of 5,000 people has always been one of the major customers of our weapons factories. So, the dividends to be paid to Master Joker this quarter are only these 15 billion Baileys. Mabai's brows were still furrowed. But he did hear a little about the things that Heishin explained on his way to Donghai. Considering that the other party has always obediently paid the money on time and in full, they should not dare to deceive them now. Although the anger on Mabai's face did not subside at all, he still nodded. He waved his hands in annoyance. All right, I'll let you go this time. Next time, I won't be so easy to talk to. Page 80. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Hearing this, Heishin, who was sweating profusely, suddenly showed a relaxed expression on his face and bowed repeatedly to express his gratitude. Several men in black from the Don Quixote family stepped forward and closed the metal boxes in front of them one by one. Sir, please be patient. Heishin opened the office door skillfully and raised his hand to guide respectfully. Mabai's also touched Raoji's arm, indicating that the work had been done and he could leave. Is it over already? The elderly Raoji made a hoarse voice that seemed to vibrate in his throat, then stood up and the two walked out of the office. However, at this moment, the door of a reception room next to the office was suddenly pushed open. Wait a moment, Lord Kyle, my father's guests haven't left yet, please wait a moment. The Black Flame girl's dissuasive voice came from the reception room. But then, a young man's voice appeared. That won't do, Miss Black Flame. Kyle walked out of the reception room and looked directly at the metal boxes in the hands of several men in black, his eyes shining with golden light. He smiled slightly. After all, your father's two guests are also the target of our trip. You're right. Nami also jumped out to join in the fun. Just now, Kyle and the others, for the sake of Hei Yen, did not directly break into Hei Xian's office to threaten him. Instead, he sat in the next room, waiting for the black-hearted talks to end. Black Flame, who had nothing to do and possessed super 5 senses, wanted to take this opportunity to show himself to Kyle. Then, Hei Yen, who didn't care about his image as a Philistine father at all, broadcast the conversation in the next room to Kyle in real time. This broadcast doesn't matter. But it directly aroused Kyle's attention. Lord Raoji. Lord Mahabais. Aren't these two guys the cadres of the Don Quixote family? At this moment, Kyle finally understood where the premonition given by his super intuition came from. Are we going to confront the cadres of Don Quixote family head-on now? Kyle was a little hesitant at first. But just now, he suddenly made up his mind. Dry. Must do. It's just that it's not to make enemies with Don Quixote's family. But let Doflamingo see his value.
After walking out of the reception room, Kyle stepped forward and stood in front of the Don Quixote family.
Rao-ji? Mahabais? I didn't expect to meet two great men like you in this small East China Sea. I am really flattered by this.
Kyle smiled slightly, but his aura suddenly surged.
All of a sudden, Tsukuyami's skill suddenly activated. The powerful spiritual force instantly enveloped all the men in black.
Under the crushing pressure of Kyle's terrifying mental power, these minions didn't even last a second in the real world, and then they staggered and fell to the ground.
The metal boxes containing Bailey also fell to the ground one by one. Ha, heroic hockey.
Looking at his younger brother who suddenly fainted, Mahabas immediately showed a shocked expression. Nami, who was behind him, saw that he was slacking off and immediately waved her arms with golden eyes.
The wind is coming.
Several whirlwinds suddenly appeared out of nowhere under the metal box, carrying the metal box and flying towards Kyle and others.
But at this moment, boom!
A gust of violent fist winds suddenly blew away the whirlwind summoned by Nami, causing all the metal boxes to fall to the ground again. Everyone's eyes instantly turned to the direction where the fist wind came from. Lao Ji, who was distracted and unable to tell the directions just now, at this moment seemed to be 30 years younger, with bulging muscles and extremely strong.
Little devil! Who are you?
The real boss of this trip, Rao Ji, looked solemnly at Kyle, who was suspected of using Conqueror's Haki, and asked a threatening question.
You dare to attack us and steal our money? Are you tired of living? The violent momentum rises into the sky.
The smooth floor beneath Rao Ji's feet shattered at this moment, and the flying wood chips flew towards Kyle and others like bullets.
39 of the Binding Dao, Roundgate fan.
Upon seeing this, Dashigi let out a light shout. A golden energy barrier suddenly appeared in front of Kyle, blocking all the flying wood chips and maintaining Kyle's carefree and relaxed temperament. Facing the strong aura of this veteran pirate, Kyle smiled calmly and said,
Don't be so angry, old man. Getting angry is not good for the health of the elderly. He immediately looked around and saw through the window the factories around him spewing black smoke. He smiled and said, I don't think you want to make this factory inoperable, do you? Why don't we find a more spacious place and have a good chat? Chapter 76. Let's be fair, let's do it together. 4K. Under the guidance of the factory manager Xin, Kyle and his team and Rao Ji came to an open space. This is a testing ground usually used to test the power of artillery shells, so there are no signs of human life within a radius of several kilometers. Regardless of whether a conflict would break out between them, everyone would definitely be happy to see them stay away from the workshop area. At this time, Lao Ji was still maintaining his strong and muscular appearance. This is his unique secret technique, which is to store up the excessive strength in his youth and keep it for old age, so that he can still burst out the strength and skills at his best in his youth. It's a bit similar to the Yin seal of the big blonde cow in Naruto. It has to be said that Lao Ji is a genius master of both physical skills and Qigong. If it weren't for the fact that he was too old and was a member of the Don Quixote family, Kyle would have wanted to bring this old man on board as an instructor. Unfortunately, the cadres of the Don Quixote family have extraordinary trust in the young master Doflamingo and are extremely loyal to him. Trying to pull people over from Doflamingo might be more difficult than trying to pull Doflamingo himself over. What on earth are you going to say, little devil? After arriving at the spacious venue, a hot-tempered Mabais patted his big belly, looking ready to fight at any time. Because they have a lot of experience, they clearly understand. Every owner of Conqueror's Haki, even if their strength is average, is a born troublemaker. This is also the reason why they are willing to communicate with a small character with a bounty of only 3,000 million Baileys in this weakest sea. They are not so arrogant as to look down on a person who possesses domineering Haki. In comparison, Kyle and his group seem to be very calm and composed. This is normal, because except for Kyle, the other members of the Dusk Pirates are still unaware of the terrifying strength of the two people opposite them, and are still immersed in the power standards of the East China Sea. Under the puzzled gazes of Heishin and Hyan, father and daughter, Kir took a step forward with a smile on his face. It's very simple. I want to talk to the Lord Joker behind the two adults about the ownership of this island. A question of belonging?
Raoji and Mabai's were both stunned. The next second, the two of them suddenly revealed expressions of shame and anger, as if they were being teased.
Boy, what do you want to do? Me? Kyle smiled slightly. I want to unify the underground weapons sales market in the East China Sea.
But from what I understand, the current underground weapons production base in the East China Sea seems to be in the hands of your Lord Joker.
So I want to talk to him and see if he can give me the production base because I'm a rookie pirate. Are you daydreaming? Mabai's expression became increasingly hostile. Or do you want to snatch business from the underground king, Lord Joker?
Kyle thought for a moment with his poor acting skills, then smiled slightly.
Maybe both. Boom!
A surge of momentum suddenly burst out from Laoji's body, forming an invisible impact that swept towards Kyle and others like a storm.
Are you kidding us? Brat! Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you have Conqueror Hockey. In the New World, there are many people with the same qualifications as you, but only a few of them can actually survive. Raoji burst out with a powerful aura and threatened Kyle with the mentality of a veteran. But a powerful dragon can't defeat a local snake, right?
There was a shining light in Kyle's dark eyes, just like the confident smile hanging on the corners of his mouth.
And just then,
from behind him, a fierce wind pressure suddenly erupted, which was not inferior to the wild impact.
Nami's body was floating in the air, her eyes glowing with bright blue light. Whether or not I can do whatever I want is not up to you to decide. The hurricane is howling. Ha!
A violent airflow suddenly appeared in front of Nami, and then quickly formed a huge tornado, tearing the earth and sweeping towards the direction of Laoji and the others. Upon seeing this, Laoji chuckled.
Alright legends, that's it for today. Like, subscribe, and I'll meet you in the next audiobook.